Welcome back to another FPL deadline stream, this time out of Gameweek 35. We are approaching the end of the season. We are in the final month of FPL and UCL Fantasy, but everything you need to know, all the deadlines, team selections, wildcards, and all of that jazz will be covered on this channel. Be sure to subscribe as well. We are getting very close towards 33,000 subscribers, and that is going to be our biggest objective by the end of the campaign. And maybe by Tuesday for the UCL Fantasy deadline stream, we'll be able to achieve that goal. And be sure to like this video, get it to over 100 to begin with, and then we'll see where we can go from there. And check all the social media links in the description for my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Discord server, FPL League, Spotify, and much more. Let's get straight into your questions and comments as always, and it's good to see a lot of you here already. And we'll start off with Callum Jr., who is competing in the top spots of Fantasy Premier League this season. So let's start off with him. And he says the following. Evening, Dylan. Thoughts on Saka to Mbumo? Can't see Saka starting this week. Captaincy is then between Bowen or Mbumo, as I prefer them over Marmoush. Yeah, it is quite a template move this week, it looks like, and I also cover this in my team selection. That's my most likely move, and Saka went down in price overnight. Not that it's a big deal. Of course, Mbumo is significantly cheaper, so you're not going to be priced out of it, but it could impact future moves, perhaps, if you aren't a bit too careful. But I think Mbumo is one of the best midfielders in the game when you look at fixtures, the fact he's on penalties, solid underlying numbers, and he is template, but captaining him over the next two game weeks could be a differential of sorts, so to speak. But in terms of those on YouTube and Twitter, and also those fighting around your rank, Callum, I do have to say I think a lot of people will be captaining Mbumo this week, or at least considering that possibility. But I also think Saka won't start now. I was having that opinion a few days ago that he could still get the nod and get 70+ minutes, then be subbed off. And maybe Arsenal take it seriously against Bournemouth, try to secure that top 5 qualification. But ultimately, it's all about the Champions League semi-final next week on Wednesday, which I'll also cover on this channel. So it's a kind of standard transfer, but makes a lot of sense. With the captaincy, I'll show you my definitive list, but Mbumo is my preference over Jared Bowen. Easy says likely to take a -4 hit. Will sell Wan-Bissaka to Mikalenko, and either sell Saka or Ivanilson / Mateta to another mid. I already have Mbumo or Vissa. Yeah, looks like a solid set of transfer plans. I'm a bit skeptical about the -4 for Mikalenko, but if you have nobody else to cover for Wan-Bissaka this week, then I can somewhat understand what you're going for there. It's absurd that there is no double Gameweek Phase 6 since there are rumours that City and Palace play in Gameweek Phase 7 2 days after the final. I don't think it's 2 days after the final, but there is still a possibility, by the way. I know we kind of got conclusive updates yesterday from the Premier League, but they are still in talks with Aston Villa and Spurs about potentially having that game feature in Gameweek 36. So as things stand, it looks like we'll have no doubles or blank gimmicks for the season, but I'll show you the article I saw earlier. So maybe this isn't over just yet. In the case of Crystal Palace and Man City, though, it looks like they will definitely keep their fixture in 37. Yusuf says bench 2, Burn, Munoz, Konsa, Gavardio, and Colwill. I'd bench Colwill for sure. I still think Liverpool will score, despite having a rotated side, so to speak, and Arne Slot said something along those lines in the press conference today. I think the second one to bench is arguably Dan Burn, but I'd definitely start Gavardio and Munoz. I think those two are locked in. And as for the third starter, I'd lean towards Konsa, but not by much. I think both Aston Villa and Newcastle concede. And bench 1 between Sarr, Mateta and Murphy. Well, you can see on screen now what I'm going for. And whilst it's not locked in, my current preference is to bench Ismaila Sarr. Welcome, Cylindra. Hey, Dylan, I got 2 free transfers. Is it worth selling Saka to Mbumo and Raya / Martinez to Pickford, or just save my other transfer? And which two to bench out of Sarr, Mateta, Rodgers, Murphy, Kanate? I'd probably bench Kanate from those lot. And as for your first question, it is worth those transfers, but I'm also thinking about Ryan Martinez. Raya isn't desirable in Gameweek Phase 6, and I'd argue 37 as well. He's decent this week, although I think Bournemouth will score. I think the only Gameweek where Raya is viable is the final one against Southampton away, but ultimately I'd lean towards yes for both transfers. Cyril says, hey Dylan, start one of Munoz, Nico Williams and Livramento. Munoz for me. Nico Williams is not too far behind, and in terms of clean sheet odds, he'd be slightly higher, in my opinion, but I think Munoz with the attacking threat is the kind of go-to asset from those three. Taylor says, who do I bench? So from Ryan Martinez, I bench Martinez. Gavadio, Kivio, Wan-Bissaka, Konsa, Munoz. Well, I'd start Munoz. Probably I'd still go for Kivio, and I think I'd also go for Konsa here. Yeah, I think those three. Roger, Sarr, Salah, Saka, KDB, Isak, Mateta, Marmoush. So from those attackers, I'm currently benching Sarr, and I'm probably going to recommend the same to you as well. Which one, Saka to Mbeumo or Roll, or both Saka and Sarr to Mbeumo Bowen? I'm in a similar boat to you. I think Saka to Mbeumo is the best move. Welcome, Julian. Good to see you. Jamie says, hello, Dylan. Which manager should I get for assistant manager? Well, that is a great question. I think for those that haven't used the chip, it almost certainly has to be used now or in Gameweek 36. Do not use it later in the season. Otherwise, you won't get the free full game weeks. If we actually take a look to Fantasy Football Hub, these are the predicted points for the next 3 game weeks, and Pep Guardiola is top. Now, in Gameweek 37, that could be slightly problematic against Bournemouth. And of course, that's going to be a couple of days after the FA Cup final, so Man City could heavily rotate, but you would back them to win the next 2 matches, particularly against Southampton in Gameweek 36. So my top pick, and the same goes for Fantasy Football Hub, is Pep Guardiola. I think he's the best option in Gameweek 35 and 36. You've also got Hursler, Glasner, Postecoglou and Moyes in the top 5 for predicted points, but I'm not entirely sure if I share that sentiment. So I think Pep is the standout in my opinion, and even with Arteta and Slot, I'd probably avoid both of them. They've been quite reliable for most of the season since this chip was introduced in Gameweek 24. I think Pep Guardiola is probably the best. If you want to go a bit riskier and chase table bonus, that is also an opportunity. But if you want to play a bit safer, I think Pep Guardiola is the answer. If we also look at the other names, Arteta is 6th. You've got Potter, Amorim, Slot, Van Nistelrooy. So this is the order of the rest of the managers. Thomas Frank, Iriola, Emery, Maresca, Nuno Espirito Santo, McKenna, Vitor Pereira, Marco Silva, Eddie Howe, and Juric, who is now Simon Rusk, of course, since Juric is no longer at the club. Also taking a look at the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating, until Gameweek 38, this is. Ipswich Town are top, Everton, Leicester, Brentford and Man City are in the top 5, and then you've got Nottingham Forest in 6th. You've also got Arsenal, Newcastle, Brighton, Liverpool and Chelsea in the bottom 5. So the Blues are in 20th there in this ranking. With predicted points this week, Mohamed Salah is top once more with 7 expected points. Isak, Visser, Marmoush and Mbeumo are in the top 5. And we've also got Cunha, De Bruyne, Watkins, Bowen and Mateta. Some of these names feature in my captaincy list, but I've also got a few different names in there. And 1 or 2 might be rotation risks, which I'll talk about later in the stream. With price changes, we could see Trossard, Visser, Flecken, Bowen, Ruben Dias, Collins, Aït-Nouri, Branthwaite, Mbeumo, and Pickford all go up in price tonight. The same goes for Gavadio. As for Rashford, Savio, and several others, I imagine, Munoz, Asensio, Luka Dean, Minter, Quansah, Hill, and Gabriel, they could go down in price, but I don't think all of them will happen at the same time. And if we take a look at the stats comparison of Mbeumo and Jarrod Bowen, they're 2 of the best midfielders to buy this week. They were highlighted in my transfers video, and I'll showcase their stats once more. But Mbeumo does lead in terms of goals. Bowen is slightly more impressive with the creativity, at least with the output, to be fair, because with big chances created, Mbeumo has 16 to Bowen's 10, more key passes with 65, the expected assist is higher, and the same goes for XG, shots in the box, although that's identical. Bowen does have 2 more shots than Mbeumo, but once again, their stats are very similar, and shots on target are pretty much neck and neck. They're both great assets. I think Brentford are more reliable than West Ham in general, and Mbeumo has been more consistent than Jarrod Bowen, but I think it's very impressive what Bowen has done this season in a struggling West Ham side, and I think what separates both of them is the penalty duties for Bryan Mbeumo, but I would still try to buy both if possible. I'm in a position where if I want to get both, it would be for a -4 hit, and if you're also benching Ismaila Sarr or Jacob Murphy, Jean-Philippe Mateta, I'm not entirely sure if it's worth taking a -4 hit to then bench one of those players anyway. So that's why I think Mbeumo should be the priority, but Bowen is another good option, and he could do very well against Tottenham and in the preceding fixtures this season, which includes Man United away and Nottingham Forest at home. And West Ham do wrap up this season with Ipswich Town away, so that could also be another good shout there for Jarrod Bowen, even with the captaincy when we approach Gameweek 38. Let's also take a look at fpl.team, which I referred to in my team selection video yesterday. So my provisional Gameweek 36 squad includes Verbruggen away to Wolves. I'm going to bench all my Arsenal players, and in the case of Saka, he will likely be sold before that deadline anyway, and my plan is to actually sell him today before this one that we have on board. Milenkovic, Gvardiol and Munoz is a decent defensive line. I think Munoz slightly lets it down. I know Tottenham have been poor in the Premier League, but you'd still back them to score against Crystal Palace at home. I've also got Rodgers, Murphy, Mbeumo and Salah, should I bring Mbeumo in for Saka, of course. Marmoush, Isak and Mateta would be up front, and a decent bench, so to speak, but with no doubles or blanks penciled in right now, I'm not in a terrible position to navigate the remaining gimmicks of the season, but we could still see rotation for Crystal Palace and Man City, as their full focus will shift towards the FA Cup final in over a week's time. So things could definitely still take a turn for the worse. And of course, in Gimmick 37, I would be looking to start Gvardiol and Marmoush, but maybe they don't start in that Premier League game. So there's a lot up in the air, but I could do something like this. I could start Marmoush over Saliba. And also Morgan Rodgers, I don't mind starting him, to be fair. And then in terms of benching headaches, I would have quite a few in every single game week, basically. And I've even got one today, which I'll cover, I'm sure, in a lot of detail. But yeah, I'd still try to start Rodgers and perhaps over Ismail Assar. That would be my current Game Week 37 squad. But let's focus on Game Week 35 first, of course. This is just a visualization of future game weeks and my current plans. But Mbeumo in for Saka is looking very likely indeed. And let's take a look as well at FPL Challenge. So this week, any Brighton or Newcastle player will have their points doubled. So I've got Jordan Pickford, Trippier, Mitoma, Jacob Murphy and Isak as my captain, but I might change one or two things anyway and ignore this kind of double points thing, so to speak, in FPL Challenge. I'll go back to this at some point, but let's show you my Gimmick 35 team selection as things stand. So I haven't made a transfer yet, but I've only got one free move available. Welcome, Ahmed. Always good to see you. And the same goes to Baraf. Robert Moreno says, hello, Luis Diaz out, Sharda in. Well, I actually discussed Sharda yesterday before Brentford even played their match. And whilst he has a high ceiling in individual games, I'd still rather advocate for Mbeumo and Vissa. I know they're quite template, but going for both of them simultaneously will still actually be quite low owned with EO, effective ownership. So I think that is my recommendation with Brentford. Go for both Vissa and Mbeumo at the same time, rather than Sharda, who can be quite inconsistent overall. Thank you, Another Hoops. Hi, man. Appreciate the content. Thoughts on starting Bruno or Murphy? My main concern with Bruno is the minutes, and whilst United have a commanding lead in the Europa League semi-final, I still think they could rotate a little bit in the Premier League, and whilst Bruno Fernandes will likely start, we did see him benched very recently, which is something we never thought would happen. But I think from these two, I would lean towards Bruno Fernandes, despite Murphy being in brilliant form. OK says, hey Dylan, start Sarr or Mateta? Sarr scored 2 goals in the FA Cup and Mateta missed a penalty. And is Sarr to Bowen for a -4 worth it? Yeah, that is true. But Ismail Sarr, for some reason, loves playing against Aston Villa. That's 5 goals and 2 assists against them this season in just 3 appearances. And Mateta has been the more consistent and reliable FPL asset. So between those two, I'm looking to start Mateta, despite what we saw in the FA Cup semi-final. But I think it's very difficult to predict these Crystal Palace assets because one game it will be Eze stealing the show, another one it will be Mateta, and then Ismail Sarr will get a massive return, but he can also be very frustrating at the same time. I just think Mateta offers a higher floor, so to speak, and a guaranteed return almost, whilst Ismail Sarr is very hit and miss. So I get your point, it's a very good one, but I'd rather go for Mateta for the consistency. I don't think Timber will start. If Ben White is available, he will get the nod against Bournemouth. Jack says start Sarr or Savio. That is an interesting one. I think with Savio, a bit similar to Bruno Fernandes, the main concern is minutes, and that's always the case with Savio, unfortunately. I'd lean towards Sarr here, but not by much. Yeah, Isak is a front runner for the captaincy. His record against Brighton isn't necessarily that great though. And even with Mbeumo against Man United, for example, he's only scored 1 goal against them in his career. The same goes for Isak against Brighton. So I don't think there's any standout for the captaincy this week, but Isak would still be in the top 5. Thoughts on Bowen for the captaincy? I've actually got him ranked a bit lower. He's another one who, surprisingly, doesn't have a great record against Tottenham, particularly in home matches. But I think with the way Tottenham are playing this season, especially in the Premier League, and I also think their full focus will be on the Europa League semi-final. That late goal by Bodo Glimt might have put a few nerves there. going into the second game. But yeah, Bowen is a good option. He's in my top 10 easily, but not in the top 5, surprisingly, which you may disagree with. Yeah, Mark, undoubtedly Game Week 35 or 36 is the best. That is not up for debate. Between those two game weeks, I'd probably use it now, but for some people, it might be different because they might have a chip remaining, for example. And then, that could definitely rule out Game Week 36 from the equation. So you use the assistant manager now, and then for Game Week 38, you use the free hit, which I think could be very underrated. But I think Game Week 35 looks very decent. Bench Mateta or Murphy? I think from those two, I'd rather bench Murphy. Terry says Cunha, Sarr, or Rodgers play 1. I'd actually go for Rodgers here, and I'd go for Saliba. Captain Calfridge says Consul, Livramento, Munoz, Saliba, Nico Williams. So the 3 I'd start are Munoz, Nico Williams, and probably Saliba. Start Raya or Martinez, Shishivane. While Raya probably has a higher chance of keeping a clean sheet, Martinez has the better saves potential. It would be Raya for me. Joyton says, thank you so much for recommending Trippier and Pope. Great choice. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm kind of gutted I didn't go for Trippier in the end, but my defenders didn't do too shabby. Trent got an assist, 8 Nuri and Sessegnon got 11 pointers, but I also had Jose Sarr on the bench, so I was kind of thinking, oh, what if I started Jose Sarr or went for Robert Sanchez in goal and then went for Trippier? That would have been perfect, but I still gained a lot of points in the free hit, and I think most of us did, so it's been the best free hit in ages in terms of a template free hit usage. Let's not even talk about last season, which was by far the worst, so it can swing in roundabout stay of the luck. Abhishek says 8 Nuri or Munoz. It'd be Munoz this week, 100%. Captain Mbeumo or KDB? They're both in my top 3, actually. Mbeumo is higher up. That's all I'm going to say. And later on in this stream, I'll show you the graphics. Yeah, I was asked this earlier, Mitchie, and probably not. I can do the same thing. I could sell one of Rodgers, Murphy, or Sarr to Jared Bowen, whilst also buying Mbeumo for Saka. I don't think I'm going to do it. Jenny B says, hey Dylan, Raya versus Martinez, Kivior versus Milenkovic, Murphy, Eze, Rodgers. I would start Raya, Milenkovic, and I'd actually go for Rodgers this week. He scored against Fulham in the reverse fixture, and I think he can do very well by the end of this season, but he certainly was off it in the FA Cup semi-final. Sam says bench 2. I'd bench 8 Nuri. I know he's got the attacking threat, but I think City will score 2 or 3 goals. And I would also bench Timber. I don't think he starts. Start Elanga or Murphy. Slight preference for Murphy there. And I would also go for Nico Williams. Noel says, hi Dylan, I currently have Saka on the bench. Would you bench Eze or Sarr instead if you had both? Possibly Sarr. Eze's my favourite of the 3 this week, arguably, but Saka is actually in my top 10 captaincy list, and that's with the assumption that he gets good minutes. At least 30 plus off the bench or getting 60 plus as a starter. I personally don't think Saka will start. If he does get significant game time, though, I think he will do well against Bournemouth, but that is a big if. Yeah, I think Salah will start. Arne Slot referred to possible rotation, so expect a few changes to be made, but Salah should still start there. Start Ruben Dias or Kivior? Ruben Dias this week. Sam says 1 free transfer. They're both very promising, but I'd probably do Saka to Mbeumo. Baraf says, I did 3 transfers in, Bowen, Mbeumo and Watkins in for Gordon, Mateta and Saka. I like the look of all of them. Now, selling players like Saka and Mateta could backfire. We know the quality of those players, but I think those transfers in are really promising, and Watkins is a great differential and 1 week punt this week. Maybe not differential in terms of overall ownership, but he won't be transferred in by that many FPL managers who are still tryharding in this game. I don't think Saka will start the game. He definitely won't play 90 minutes, and I've always said that. Could he start and get 60, 70 minutes? Absolutely, but I think the more likely scenario is that he comes off the bench. Yeah, Bowen's a good option, one, but he's not my favourite captain. So as Jamie asked earlier, I think the best assistant manager is Pep Guardiola. Welcome, Dave. Hopefully you're doing well. Everything good on this side, and very hot weather actually in the UK for London standards and all that. Matthias says, do you think Timber will start? No, I don't think he will start, and I think selling him is viable. Yeah, Watkins captain is definitely a good shout. Christian Kim says, hi Dylan, do you think KDB and Rico Lewis are decent picks? KDB, yes. Rico Lewis might not even start the game. But KDB is more than a good pick. I think for the next 2 game weeks in particular, he's a great one if he gets the minutes. Yeah, all good, Sophia. What about you? Rogers, Clive at Murphy, select two. Rogers and Murphy, but it all depends on the Arsenal lineup. If they rotate heavily, then Clive and Bournemouth assets will look much more appealing all of a sudden, but I still think Arsenal go relatively strong. Sheriff says, hi mate, I prefer Bowen over Mbumo. That's fine. I always encourage people with different opinions, and Mbumo is the template pick this week. I'm not going to deny that. So Bowen isn't too far off Mbumo. I don't think it's a clear standout with the captaincy or transfers in, so I think that's a good idea. Thank you, Haribo, for the super chat. Hi, Dylan. I'm 60 points off from the leader in my mini league. Time to go super differential. Any advice? Have one transfer and the bench boost left. Yeah, definitely, because you certainly aren't going to make up points by having the same team as him or going for the same captain. You've got to think outside the box here. So maybe, for example, in your situation, you go a bit aggressive and you buy both Bowen and Mbumo, or you also go for Vissa up front, which someone else rightfully mentioned, Ollie Watkins. These are the sorts of players I'd consider. Of course, Mbumo is template. You can still buy him, though, and then buy others like Bowen or Vissa to go different to your mini league rival. So let me know your team or your kind of general situation, what you're looking to do, but certainly you should be looking to go a bit different. With the bench boost, it's difficult to say when you should exactly use it. There is still a very small chance that we have a double in 36 based on a report I saw earlier, which I'll show you very soon, but I wouldn't hold your breath. And ultimately, if I had to pick a Gameweek to bench boost, it's probably still Gameweek 36 anyway. I think with 37, you're more likely to get rotation from Man City and Crystal Palace, and also there could be a few other issues there. So yeah, Gameweek 36 bench boost and try to go different there if possible. Well, I actually said at the beginning of the season when I was asked about who do you think will win Europa League, and I said both of those names. United are the bigger club, and they've got the better mentality, and they've also got the track record of winning cups recently. Even though the Carabao, you can say what you want about that. The FA Cup, still very impressive being Man City there, and Liverpool to win that title. I think United are the more likely, but yeah, Spurs have won the Europa League twice, I think, in their history. And they've also got a good record against United this season, a very good record. So you could argue they are Man United's kryptonite, but I think in a one-off final, you'd give the edge to the bigger club in Man United. Drigger says, hi Dylan, wildcarding any options for Kirkes in that range? Well, I actually discussed Kirkes yesterday in my wildcard video, and because he faces Leicester at home in the final game week, I don't think he's a bad option to keep there. So yeah, you could definitely go for somebody else. Aït-Nouri isn't too shabby, but the fixtures aren't great. Milenkovic, I think, is probably a standout replacement there for him, but hard for me to say without knowing your team. But if you have some of those options already, I'd highly encourage you to consider Everton defenders like Jake O'Brien. 0.6% ownership, faces Ipswich Town this week at home, and Southampton also at home in Gameweek 37. Yeah, Ortega should play, I believe. Edison, I think, isn't available still, but I'll cover the latest updates very soon. And by the way, we just got a few more updates now that I won't cover in the graphics section. So you know what I'm going to do? Let's go straight to the injury updates now. So we'll start off with Liverpool and Arne Slot. So he said, there is certainly a difference between now, whether we are still competing. My lineups will be different to the last 10 months. We are not going to change everyone, but there will be a few players that come into the team, and there'll be a certain rotation for the upcoming games. That's not to say we're going to lose. We have a lot of trust in the players we have. And he also said this on Conor Bradley. He will train with us today, so that's the first start. Let's see how he does. So we expect him to be available. I don't know if that means he'll be available to start, but if all goes well today and tomorrow, he'll probably be in the squad. Next up is with Newcastle. Joelinton is unlikely to play again this season, so Eddie Howe said the likelihood is that it will be difficult if he'll play again this season. But with Joe, you never rule him out. He's so motivated to try and come back. You can feel free to pause and read the rest of your quotes yourself. And Sven Botman is pretty much on the cusp of returning. He came through last weekend okay. He trained again this week and looks good, so it's been positive to have him back. Well, I say returning, he's already been back, but it looks like it's all positive and there are no injuries, no kind of aggravation of any potential issues he had before. And Iriola said this on Bournemouth: we'll have the same players we had available the other day, more or less. We are pretty consistent right now. We only have the issues with Ryan Christie, Enes Unal, and Luis Sinisterra. The others are available and ready for tomorrow. And Kluivert, Wait, I think that is out of date. This is a wrong one, so ignore that one. Let's move on. So Guardiola said this on Haaland and Rodri. So Haaland is getting better. I don't think he'll play tonight. We are really pleased that Erling is back and Rodri is back in the training sessions. And he also said this on Rodri. It was a difficult injury. It was an injury of 7 to 11 months, more or less. The doctors said he feels really good. Every day he's making more sessions. But we have to wait. We have to wait and take a step backwards, and being injured again, that's why you have to be careful. So basically it's all about caution there of Rodri. And he also said that he will stop when he leaves Man City. So that's something he revealed in the press conference earlier. And Vitor Pereira said this: small problems, but nothing special. I hope that everyone will be ready to help the team. And Marco Silva stated the following: Anthony Robinson is going to be available for the match. Rodrigo Muniz, no. Not for this game, probably not for the next one. And it's going to be difficult to have him until the end of the season. Of course, we're going to try to see how he's going to react. But the news, no. It's not very good regarding Rodrigo Muniz. We have to see week by week, but it looks difficult for him to be ready until the end of the season. And Fabian Hürzeler actually gave updates on Rutter and Paul van Hek. Sorry, Jean-Paul van Hek. So he's ready to start. He trained on Wednesday, and after the training, he immediately came to me and said he wants to play. Adam Webster trained on Wednesday, so he'll also be an option, maybe to be in the squad. Veltman and Lamptey are also options to start. Of course, they had a longer phase where they weren't able to play, but in general, they are ready to start. The same goes for Igor Julio and Mitoma. And with Rutter, he said, I'm quite positive and convinced that we will see him already back this season. Next up is Ipswich Town. To be honest, I'm not going to go through so many individually again, but you know, last week I said we're in a really difficult spot. It's not very dissimilar. So that's what McKenna said there. His quotes are always very long for some reason. And Simon Russ said this about Southampton. Paul Owanochu has been training for the last few days, so he's back in the mix. We have a pretty clean bill of health at the moment. To be honest, I think that might have been from a few days ago. I'm going to have to double check that. But this is definitely from today from Ruven Nistelrooy on Leicester's goalkeepers. So Hermansson had an operation, so Jakob will be in the rest of the season for the remaining games. It's something which had to be solved to get him up and running for pre-season. It's better to do it now so he's ready instead of delaying. So you can also feel free to see the rest of that quote, but Hermansson will not play again. We are a lot thinner than before. Ricardo Pereira came off with a muscle injury and will be out for a couple of weeks. It's possible that he can still play. De Cordova-Reid had a muscle injury and we don't expect him to play this season anymore. Buonanotte had concussion, so he's in the protocol for concussion and will miss Saturday's game. We'll see if he will make it into next week's match. Of course, Mavididi, we don't expect him to play again this season. With Fatau, it's clear that he's also not involved for this season. And Maresca said this about Chelsea. At the moment, Josmark Guiu and Aaron are out. Christo Nkunku has a small problem. He won't be with us in Sweden. It is exactly the same for Robert Sanchez too, although he is working on the pitch. So compared to Christo, he is in a better situation. He wasn't with us in Sweden either, and we will see and assess them both before Sunday. And very short and sweet here from Thomas Frank, all fit and ready to go again. We also had an update by Ruben Amrim. So Mazraoui cannot play at the limit of injury. We have to be clear. Focus is to save players and be competitive. Players under risk of injury will not play. We will assess today and next day. We must be careful. We are Manchester United. Must think we can win the game. Some players understand if you play Sunday, you can play Thursday. And the other potential Europa League finalists soon to be Tottenham Hotspur. We had some updates there by Ange Postecoglou. It looks like Lucas Bergval's injury is significant enough to keep him out for the rest of the season. He tweaked some ligaments in his ankle, so he's out. Dom Solanke's not too bad. He's still a bit sore from last night, but we don't think it's anything serious. He's a doubt for the weekend, but we hope he'll settle down pretty quickly. James Maddison is a bit more of a concern because it's his knee, but we've sent him for a scan. We are just waiting for the outcome. And on the Spurs captain Heung-min Son, Son's working hard. He's progressing. He's still doing individual training, but he's out on the grass and feels better every day. We'll see how he's going by Thursday, whether he'll be available for next Thursday. And we are approaching the end of these quotes. Mikel Arteta said this about Arsenal. I will assess how the squad is tomorrow and see who I have available to start and as subs. Jorginho's injury is more complicated than expected. Thankfully, he is fine and recovering well. Hopefully, things go well in the next week, so integrate into the team for the last few games. And about Kai Havertz, he said, I think so. If everything goes the way it is at the moment, then he'll have a chance of playing again this season. Unai Emery talked about another potential concern, Marcus Rashford, who was rumoured to miss the rest of the campaign. For tomorrow, he is not available, but he is working to come back as soon as possible. But it will still be weeks until he's available. Hopefully he will play with us for 1 or 2 matches before the end of the campaign. So Marcus Rashford is out for the next 2 game weeks. So Dominic Calvert-Lewin is still, up in the air. David Moyes said, I'm hoping to have Dom around it. He's trained this week. In truth, it'd probably be too quick to put him back in. And even minutes is a little bit worrying, but I think I want to get him back involved. And Oliver Glasner said, all players are still fit, no problems. All players take part in the training sessions, and this is how we want to end the season. And this is the update we got yesterday. All fixtures are remaining in Gameweek 37, but there is still the possibility of Aston Villa Tottenham going into Gameweek 36. So this is an update that we got earlier, and it was reported by Dom Smith. So the Premier League remain in talks with Tottenham and Aston Villa over potentially moving their 18th of May fixture to allow Spurs longer prep time if they're in the Europa League final. So maybe we get an update over the next week about this situation, but it's worth having that in the back of our minds because we could still get that double game week, albeit a very small one for Aston Villa and Tottenham Hotspur. In terms of other injury updates that we've just gotten now, so I don't have the graphics here on screen, but I'm going to read them out very quickly and just kind of summarize the key bits of information. So Anthony Gordon has a knee injury. So Eddie Howe says, I don't think it's too bad. Of course, that was last week. He's had a 4 weeks training this week and he's looked better physically, I'd say. So the main thing for him is to try and now, if he's 100% fit, focus on his performance and make sure he's at the levels that he has been at for the majority of the season. He's a massive player for us and we're going to need him. And now moving on to the other key bits of information. Nuno has talked about Callum Hudson-Odoi. He felt something. We have to assess how he is. We think it's his hamstring. This is our major concern, first of all. Try to solve the mistakes and correct them so he can compete better. At the same time, see if our players can hold on and keep going. And there might be one more update, and it's by Graham Potter on Somerville. The target will be the first few weeks of pre-season, so yeah, Somerville is out for the rest of the campaign as well there. Now, we could get 1 or 2 more updates before the deadline ends, so if that is the case, I'll keep you up to date there, but that was obviously very extensive. And what I'm going to do now is show you some different graphics. So let's go to the Gameweek analysis section and start off with my predictions. So for today's game, I've gone for Man City 2, Wolves 1, Aston Villa 3, Fulham 1, Everton 2, Ipswich Town 0, Leicester 2, Southampton 2, Arsenal 1, Bournemouth 1, Brentford 3, Man United 1, Brighton 2, Newcastle 2, West Ham 1, Tottenham 0, Chelsea 2, Liverpool 2, and then Crystal Palace 1, Nottingham Forest 1. A lot of draws there predicted. We'll see how that transpires. Now, in terms of the highlighted team, I'm going for something a bit different here with Fulham, and I think 2 players could stand out here. Now, one of them is going to be Morgan Rogers, and the other is Ollie Watkins. And as you can see here, the blue circles indicate the chances conceded by Fulham all season, and the heat map is Ollie Watkins' touches this season. So I think Watkins, with a great record against Fulham, he has scored in 3 consecutive games against them, can be a great option in that position. So yeah, I think Watkins and Rodgers would be very appealing for this week. Now, in terms of the clean sheet odds and over 2 goals, we have Man City in top spot with a 45% chance of a clean sheet, and the same goes for scoring over 2 goals. Everton are second though, and this is ranked by clean sheet odds. Villa, Arsenal, Brentford and Palace complete the top 6, and Wolves are bottom with only an 11% chance of keeping a clean sheet. But with over 2 goals, as you can see, Brentford, for example, are higher ranked than Arsenal, but the Gunners have a better defence and also a better chance of a clean sheet, according to fantasyfootballpundit.com. But let's move on to the top 10 captains, which for me is probably the most open it has ever been this season, and we are going to go probably a bit left field, you could say, in certain cases, but I've gone for Mbeumo in top spot, and that's mainly because I think United will rotate, and I think Brentford could win by 2 or 3 goals here. Marmoush, De Bruyne, Isak and Salah complete the top 5, and there isn't much in it between every single one of those options. Now, if Salah was at home, even with the title wrapped up, he'd be my top captain, that's for sure. But his record at Stamford Bridge is very underwhelming. Visser, Watkins, Bowen, Trossard and Saka finished the top 10, and with Saka, I don't think he's going to start. Otherwise, he'd be much higher up in this list, and maybe Watkins should be in that top 5 with that great record against Fulham. So those are my captaincy rankings and all the graphics there that you need. And before I go back to your questions for the rest of the stream, I'm just going to show you the graphics from yesterday's team selection video. And if you want detailed commentary and analysis, then check out that team selection podcast, and you can see how my free hit did, which on the whole was very impressive. Only 2 blanks there in Cole Palmer and a very disappointing Raul Jimenez up front, but everyone else did their business. Salah with 8 points as my captain, and of course Sessegnon was a big game changer there in my defensive line. So I got 87 points in Gameweek 34 and a significant green arrow of 36,000 places, but now the aim is to break into that top 100k and finish the season in that rank. And my only transfer that I'm considering this week is Saka to Mbeumo, but I'm still not ruling out buying Bowen for the likes of Sarr, Rodgers or Murphy and taking a -4 hit in the process. But my provisional Gameweek 35 team, and of course we do have almost 2 hours before the deadline, is Raya in goal, Munoz, Milenkovic, Gvardiol, Rodgers, Mbeumo, Murphy and Salah, with Mateta, Isak and Marmoush, and my bench has Verbruggen, Sarr, Saliba and Livramento. My current plan is to captain Mbeumo, but that isn't set in stone. I may end up captaining Marmoush or somebody else entirely. You did see my captaincy list just a few minutes ago, and that'll give you a good opinion and insight into how I'm looking to tackle the captaincy this week. And you can also see the expected points. I think there have been a few changes, so Salah has gone up to 7 now instead of 6.9. He's by far the standout according to Fantasy Football Hub. But let's now go back to my FPL team, which of course doesn't have that Mbeumo player in, or the transfer in, for Bukayo Saka just yet. And let's go to your questions. Keep plugging away the likes, subscribe to the channel. We're aiming to get to 33k subscribers by the Tuesday deadline stream for UCL Fantasy. I'm not really a big fan of Kudus. He's had a poor season, and I also think Bowen is a more consistent option. But at this stage of the campaign, going for differentials like that with a high ceiling isn't a bad idea, but I wouldn't buy him at the expense of Bowen, that's for sure. I will bench Piston 36. I think that's probably the best way to do it, but I still wouldn't kind of like hold your hopes for a double gaming between Spurs and Villa. It's just a possibility that we should be aware of. Start Sarr or Murphy. My current preference is to start Murphy. Tuan says Sarr, sell Palmer to Saka or KDB. I will not be buying Saka right now, so KDB. Mina says, hey Dylan, would you recommend taking -4 to get Gvardiol and Mbeumo, or take a -8 to get Gvardiol, Mbeumo and Pickford or Bowen? If you were to take a -8 here, I'd recommend Bowen, not Pickford, but I see why you're suggesting him. I still have my bench boost chip, which I'm using next gaming to maybe get those lost points. Yeah, I think from what you've said, my favourite is the -4 option with Gvardiol and Mbeumo. Bench 1, Eze, Murphy, Cunha. Probably Murphy, but Cunha's never scored against Man City in his career. Yes, Sefer, I agree. Even if he scores, I don't see him having a massive ceiling this week, but I could be wrong. Milenkovic was so bad last game. He's still a good UCL, well, he's not UCL fantasy, he's still a good FPL option though, and he might not be in the Champions League next season based on how Forest are ending this campaign, but yeah, I think Forest in general were a bit off it. I may go Nico Williams now. Fair enough, I still think Milenkovic just offers more goal threat, and fun shouldn't be an issue for most people. Yeah, I think Salah will play. Richard says, hey Dylan, I'm late to the stream. Yeah. I'll see if I can get that to work. I mean, I did make sure before, but it can be very finicky. It should work the next time I attempt it, but thank you for reminding me. But yeah, with the other screens, I wasn't obviously reading out any comments, but it should be working on this one. So yeah, let's just make sure that it works now. Salah's chasing records. He needs 2 assists to break Henry and KDB's assist record. Yeah, and hopefully he doesn't, but assists, well, yeah, records are there to be broken, should I say. John Ham says, hi Dylan, Saka to Rodgers, Bowen or KDB? I'd take a punt on KDB personally. Yeah, Palmer to Mbeumo is a kind of template move, but also very logical. Iwobi or Rodgers? Rodgers. And ideal captain, I don't think there's a standout, but Mbeumo is number one. I literally just went through that. Didi says, Dylan, which two do I start out of Konsa, Martinez, Raya, Kivior? Well, it shouldn't go that wrong, right? You've got two approaches, in my opinion. You either double up on one defense, and if you were to do that, I'd still recommend Arsenal, or you just vary it with one goalkeeper from Arsenal or Villa, and then you switch up with a defender. My preference would be Martinez and Kivior. Chase says Mateta to Vissa and Konate to O'Brien for a -4. I like the moves overall, but I'd probably just stick with Konate to O'Brien for free. Hazik says start Kivior or Konsa. Kivior. Captain Mbeumo or Salah? Mbeumo, I literally just went through that as well. Alright, so Anish puts his team. Raya, Saliba, Kivior, Gavadio, Salah, Mbeumo, Captain, Rodgers, Eze, Isak, Vissa, Marmush. Yeah, solid stuff. It is fairly template, with the exception of that triple Arsenal defence, which, if they keep a clean sheet this week, it's massive, but I would highly recommend trimming that down because it's Liverpool away in 36, it's Newcastle home afterwards, and the only game where I think Arsenal keep a clean sheet right now is in 38 against Southampton away. So it's kind of a double-edged sword because that's what separates your team from the rest, because I think every other kind of pick is fairly template, you could say, or teams would look very similar to it, but that triple up in the Arsenal defence is definitely I don't know, something that separates you from the rest of the crowd. But it's just not something I'm very bullish on right now. So I'd start Ruben Dias over Saliba or Kivior. I think that would be one of my recommendations. And in future weeks, I'd recommend trimming down that Arsenal defence. That'd be my advice. Keep Mateta or go to Wood? I'd keep Mateta for now. Murphy or Cunha bench? As I mentioned before, I'd probably bench Murphy, but Cunha has never scored against Man City. Yeah, it's not a bad one. Brentford are in good form. Guardiola, though, is my favourite option. But I do get the temptation to chase table bonus, for example, or go for something a little bit lower owned and different. Yeah, from those two, I think I'd still start Saka, to be honest, but I'm personally looking to sell him to Mbeumo. And Murphy might still be my 11, so yeah, it's a difficult one. Paolo says, hey Dylan, I have wildcard, bench boost, free hit, triple captainship left. Eesh. What strategy would you do? Wildcard now, bench boost 36, triple captain 37, and free hit 38 is probably what I'd do. VE Portfolio says, hi boss, I want to buy Bowen this week and next week in Mbeumo against Ipswich. Man United have been better defending than Spurs lately. Bowen has a better chance against Spurs than in Mbeumo against United. Yeah, but I think both United and Spurs will rotate heavily. Maybe United less so, which obviously plays into your argument. And I don't really blame you for wanting to buy Bowen this week. Now, let me get this straight. With Mbeumo first in my captaincy list, I don't think he's by far the best option. And in fact, he's interchangeable with the other options like Marmush and KDB. But yeah, I think Bowen isn't too far behind either. And it's not a bad shout. Azaro12 says Cliver or Saka to Mbeumo and bench Saka. Probably Saka, because then you can use the extra funds to invest in other positions, but it's all team dependent. Bench one, I think you did ask this earlier, and I said Murphy. Leonardo says keeping Palmer isn't that bad either. They have to play for a Champions League spot and are already 4-1 up in their Europa League or Europa Conference League tie. Yeah, it's just he hasn't scored in 17 games, so the form isn't there. And there are better options elsewhere, but in Gameweek 35, there aren't many standouts this week, so keeping Palmer isn't a terrible idea. But, yeah. If I still had Palmer, I still think I'd be selling him. But for some people, Saka would be a bigger concern with the minutes, so it's a fair point. Yeah, Watkins is in my top 10 captaincy options. So he's also highlighted as a one-week punt in my transfer tips. I'll do that one more time, actually, since I haven't done it in this stream yet. So let's go to those transfer tips with some updated stats with the ownership figures and stuff like that. So Bowen is a recommended purchase. His ownership went up to 10% today, and it's probably even higher now. and the XGI is very solid at 13.93. Good fixtures to round off this season as well. Mbeumo is a template pick, but also very solid and sensible for those looking to protect their rank. And I think Visser, having him and Mbeumo simultaneously is definitely a great play, particularly for the next 2 game weeks. Now, in the hold section, I have gone for Matheus Cunha. He was more of a buy for game week 34, and now that Leicester fixture out of the way, I'm not that keen on buying him this week. I know Man City aren't great defensively, but Cunha doesn't have a great record against them. But I do like him against Brighton, Crystal Palace and Brentford to round off this season. Mateta is also a hold now. Obviously, previously was a sell. Jacob Murphy is also a hold, but maybe you can go from him to Bowen. So that is also something else to think about. I think Saka is a sell right now. I think his minutes will be managed against Bournemouth. Then it's Liverpool away, where I think he'll blank. And then Newcastle at home. Just depends how Arsenal approach that game and, what the kind of context is. I think Saka, generally speaking, will be a good captaincy option against Newcastle, but I think with the current circumstances and Newcastle's form, that might be a different story. I think Cole Palmer is also a sell, but of course someone just mentioned that it's probably worth keeping him with the Conference League tie pretty much wrapped up already, and Chelsea are still battling for those Champions League spots in the Premier League. Another sell is Van Dijk. I think Liverpool will rotate more and also concede more goals and chances. I'm going for a 2-2 draw in game week 35, but I think Van Dijk is still capable of 1 clean sheet and 1 goal from now until the end of the season. Now, my skip at the moment is Morgan Rogers, but if Aston Villa get that double in 36, then I think Rogers does turn into a buy in the immediate short term. But of course, he would then blank in 37 if that was the case. But as things stand, it looks like there will be no doubles or blanks this season. But of course, I did cover another update we got this morning. And I think the best 1 week punt, or one of the best ones, is Ollie Watkins facing Fulham. He has scored against them in 3 consecutive games. He could make it 4 quite easily. And Marcus Rashford will miss the next 2 Premier League games at the very least. So I'll go back to the captaincy list and the graphics later in the stream, but for now I'll stick with the questions that are being asked here. And all the injury updates have also been provided. Like the stream, also subscribe to the channel, it would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, at the moment I'm going for Mbeumo captain. Chase says bench 2, Burn, Munoz, Rogers, Murphy, Mateta. I would bench Burn and potentially Munoz here. I would go to... You know what, Tuan? I'd go to KDB. Yeah, I think KDB is quite interesting, to be fair. It's just... Mbeumo is more of a nailed-on player. You're not going to get any concerns with minutes. Murphy's an easy start for me. Guy's in fire form and against the leaky Brighton. Yeah, I'm quite surprised to see so many people talk about benching him or selling him. I would play Raya over Martinez de LA. Anish says sell Odegaard to Bruno. Oh, I'm guessing that's Mbeumo or roll. I would sell him to Mbeumo, yeah. But I think Mateta is also worth starting, for what it's worth. Munoz there, MH. Div says Gimmick 34 stinker, missed the deadline and completely got demolished as it was a free hit week. I've still got my free hit left. Any suggestions as to when I can use it? Well, unless Aston Villa Spurs somehow gets put into Gimmick Phase 6 on such short notice, you're not going to get anything special really for the next, 4 gimmicks from what we have left now. So it's not looking great for you, but maybe use the free hit in 37 when you've got Arsenal and Newcastle playing against each other. It is a team-dependent question though, and I don't know who's in your squad already, because I think that could inform my final answer. But on the face of it, I'd say Gimmick 37 might be decent. And if you're really happy with your team for, those weeks anyway, I always like Gimmick 38 as a free hit opportunity because it tends to be high scoring. You can identify the teams that still have something to play for, those that are on the beach, and it can go one of 2 ways: more pressure on those that have something to play for, and of course, nothing to lose for those that have their objective secured, but also the risk of rotation that comes with it. Venkat says Asensio to Burn for -4. Probably yes. Bench Wan-Bissaka or Burn? Probably Wan-Bissaka. I did go for 1-0 West Ham, to be fair. Yeah, I'd take a punt on Wan-Bissaka. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of either, but Wan-Bissaka it is. Stefan says start 2 of Diaz, Saliba, Munoz. I'd bench Saliba, I think. Pedro says, hi Dylan, I have 2 transfers. Would I go Saka to Mbeumo and Sarr to Bowen? Yeah, I'd do that. Saka and Sarr to Bowen and Mbeumo. I don't mind the Vissel one, but yeah, it's Sarr out for me. Yeah, Keith, that question was already answered. Stefan, yeah, covered as well. Let's go for the new ones. Thank you, Leonardo. The Lone Wolf says, hey up. Hey up, Dylan. I'm locked in a tight battle to win my mini-league. Konsa, Saliba, Sarr, Rogers. Yeah, Saliba and Rogers for me. No, Evanilson's not suspended. That was covered in my recent videos. They rescinded it. Start Diaz or Iwobi? Diaz. He might not start, though. Raya or Flecken? Raya. Frank Golding says, is it worth a -4 for Mbeumo and Bowen for Saka and Rashford? Yes. Mina says, thank you for answering my question. I know it's a bit late, but I just joined your mini-league. When does your League Cup start? It might be now, actually. I'm not sure how FPL do it based on the size of the mini-league, I guess. It can vary, but it should be open now, right? I'll double-check that for you, but yeah, it's worth having a look on the app. Let's see. All right, so the cup section. Now, I think the cup already started. Yeah, the cup started in Gameweek 26. So yeah, if you have joined now, then you won't be able to participate in the cup. Best double on a wildcard, Rodgers and Watkins or De Bruyne and Marmoush? I'd go for De Bruyne and Marmoush, but not by much. Mbeumo, Bowen, Isak, captain and vice. I mean, I've gone for Mbeumo, captain, and Isak, vice from those 3, but once again, I have covered that before. Ahmed says, tell me your advice to improve my squad. Sells, Fabianski, 8 Nuri, Mikalenko, Kirkes, Cucurella, Munoz, Salah, Bowen, Murphy, Palmer, Rogers, Isak, Cunha, Vanilson. Yeah, I can't lie, the autocorrect or whatever it is has kind of put me off a little bit, but yeah, ways to improve. I still like Chris Wood up front, but of course he looks less appealing now than he was in the first half of the campaign. And that would be at the expense of Evanilson. I'd recommend Vissa for Evanilson, I think. In the midfield, Palmer to, I think, Mbeumo. Quite template, but yeah, I think that is a solid choice. So Ali's buying one of those Brentford attackers that I just mentioned. Defensively, I think you're fine for now. You don't need to make any transfers this week. So I think that is probably enough. Hey Dylan, why bench Saliba? Because I've got Raya starting, and I also think Munoz has more chance of getting something. Milenkovic better chance of a clean sheet. Well, I don't think it's a clear standout, to be honest, with the bench boost, because we likely won't get a double. So Villa, Spurs could double in 36 still, which I covered earlier. I'll go through it one more time probably, but yeah, it's just because I think in Gameweek 37 you got more rotation from the FA Cup finalists in Palace and Man City, and you've also got Arsenal, Newcastle playing against each other and a few things like that. Sorry, actually, Arsenal, Liverpool playing against each other. So yeah, it all kind of, there's a few things there. Best AM chip strategy, use it now on Pep, I think. Would you keep faith with Sessegnon this weekend? I mean, he's been brilliant recently, but I think Villa will score. I've gone for a 3-1 Villa win. I'm looking to buy him soon, Gidon, but this is a double-edged sword. If I buy the template player in Mbeumo, people are saying, why don't you go different? And if I don't have him, you know, people are saying, why don't you have him? You know, it's just how it is. What's your reasoning behind Milenkovic over Saliba? Just covered, thank you. Twan says captain KDB or Marmoush. I put Marmoush second and KDB third in my list. I don't think KDB is nailed. After all, he didn't play in the FA Cup semi-final, not as a starter, but he has started the last 4 Premier League games. Amol says, did Saka to Mbeumo, so Mateta to Watkins or Sarr to Bowen for a -4? My preference is Watkins there. My issue with that, though, is that I think Mateta's better than Sarr. So it's a double-edged sword as well. Bowen in for Sarr. Yeah, for free, that's fine. Safest captain, I don't think there's really such thing, but one of Mbumo, Isak, or Salah is fairly safe. Baller says, hi Dylan, I'm 30 points off the top of the league. Pickford, Livramento, 8 Nuri, Kirkes, Gay, Mbumo as the captain. Salah, Bowen, Bruno, Szoboszlai, Isak, Wood, Ivanoson with Frank AM active. Already got 20 points. What do you recommend? I'd still go for Guardiola as your assistant manager, as one of your transfers, but that's up to you how you want to tackle that. Yeah, Pickford this week is fine. Defensively, I think you look a bit weak this week, if I'm being honest. So I'd advocate a defender transfer like Gavardio. So buying Pep and Gavardio might be very good for you. Leonardo says, hey Dylan, play Sessegnon, Cliver, or take a -4 from Rashford to bring in Bowen or KDB. I'd take a hit and I'd rather buy KDB. I mean, it's up to you, Clutch. I'm not entirely sure about KDB as a captain. I think this week it's very difficult to anticipate the best captaincy option. It'd be for Saka there, talking ball. Yeah, Pep is my favourite assistant manager. Start Eze or Savio, says Ile. Eze. Jonathan says, hola Dylan, me queda el bench, boost the assistant manager. Y no tienes muchas opciones, pero para mí es mejor usar el assistant manager ahora y el bench boost en la jornada 38. El equipo es Raya, Flecken, Saliba, Gavardiol, Muñoz, Livramento, Milenkovic, Murphy, Salah, Saka, Rogers, Mbumo, Isak, Marmoush, Joao Pedro. Sí, creo que es mejor hacer eso. Big Sam says 2 free transfers, 1 Palmer and Alanga, and Murphy for KDB Rogers. I'm not sure what that is, but or maybe it's Elanga / Murphy. Number 2, Palmer, Mateta to KDB and Wood. I'd stick with number 1. Anish says I'd rather sell Salah than Palmer at that point. Fair enough. I don't share the same opinion, but even with Salah, you can argue that he has dipped in form for sure, but Palmer hasn't scored in 17 consecutive games. From Sarr and Ivanoson, I would start Sarr. Safair says double up on Arsenal defence or start one of Livramento and Milenkovic. Milenkovic for me. Crispy Whiskers says, what the hell are you on about? Yeah, sorry, if it's science stuff or stuff from school, I'm not going to remember now. It's been a long time. Bernardo says, hey Dylan, Mateta out for Vissa or Wood? Vissa for me. Sack out for Mbumo and roll the third transfer, or do Raya to Pickford or Gordon to Bruno Bowen. Gordon to Bowen. And the other transfers look fine as they are. Yeah, best Man City pick, KDB. Thank you, Haribo, as well. I think I'm taking a -4. We'll do 8 Nuri to O'Brien for the clean sheet points, and then either Bruno to Bowen or Ivanoson to Watkins. My favourite would be Ivanoson to Watkins. Now, Rashford could return before the end of the season, and that would be in either Gameweek 37 or 38, but I think Watkins will start the remaining games here. Shavain says Mateta to Vissa or Watkins. I'd take a punt on Watkins here. Michael says thoughts on Marino and Saka to KDB and Bowen. Looks good to me. With City, it's more likely we get leaks from them or about them compared to any other team, but I wouldn't count on it. So it's not like last season or 2-3 years ago when we were getting leaks every single deadline stream, basically. But yeah, I think both transfers look sound. Start Pope or Areola? Pope. No, you know what? I'm backtracking on that one. I'm going to Areola. Simply because I've gone for a 1-0 West Ham win. In the Newcastle game, I went for 2-2. So, yeah, it makes sense to go for Areola from that perspective. It's not often I'll do that. Gideon says, can't have Peppers AM. I'm not a big fan of Glasner, I guess, over the next couple, but he has been one of the better managers this season since the introduction of the chip. But there is a lot of luck involved, and I think it's always nice to have that table bonus opportunity. But yeah, Pep is my favourite, I think, and if you can't make it work with that, then I understand. You can go for Thomas Frank or Oliver Glasner, as you mentioned. David Moyes isn't too shabby over the next 3 game weeks, but yeah. I think Glasner's fine. Elay says have Raya as the goalkeeper, bench one of Munoz, Saliba, Konsa. I'd still start Munoz. I'd probably diversify it and bench Saliba. Boton says, hey Dylan, I already have Mbeumo and one free transfer. I could do Mateta to Vissa or Watkins or Savio to Bowen. I'd rather do Savio to Bowen. Now, if Savio starts the next 2 games, that could backfire massively, but that could also potentially open the doors to KDB for you, or perhaps going to Pep Guardiola. Ferris says start Rodgers or Murphy. Rodgers. Badra says Bowen or Mbeumo. Mbeumo. Jason Phillips says who to start. I did say earlier Cunha, but he's never scored against Man City. It's a very difficult one. This is maybe one of those questions I might change my answer to. I'm going to say Murphy. Zane5287 says Ryan Kivior or Raya to Martinez. I wouldn't be selling Raya to Martinez, definitely not. If you got Martinez in your squad already, then I don't really blame you for diversifying your defense, but I definitely wouldn't buy any Aston Villa defender or goalkeeper right now unless we get that confirmation of a double in 36, which is still possible, but unlikely, I'd say. Javier Garcia says Mitoma Murphy for Rodgers. I'd keep what you have. I think most of Murphy's returns have come at home or away to the likes of bottom 3. Yeah, but Brighton have been in poor form, but I do get that point. Twan says bench 2, Saliba, Gavadio, Milenkovic, Nuri, Cucurella. I mean, look, football isn't played on paper, but I think Cucurella and Nuri to the bench makes a lot of sense. Start Asensio or Murphy? Murphy. Start Kivior or Livramento? Kivior. Dr. Waleed says, sold Eze to Bowen and Mateta to Vissa. Should I captain Bowen? He's not in my top 5, but that doesn't mean he's a bad option. And I don't think there's any standout this week for the captaincy. So he's a good option. Ed Eden says, hey Dylan, I'm chasing 20 points behind. Should I do a -4 if Savio doesn't start? Yeah, I think that's definitely reasonable. But you might have Mateta or a good option on the bench. And if that's the case, you don't need to take a hit. All the best to you as well, Shavain. Daniel Peterson says, should I play Cunha and Aït-Nouri and bench Barnes, or bench Cunha for Barnes and play Nico Williams over Aït-Nouri? I'd start Nico Williams over Aït-Nouri, and the other one is close. I think with Barnes, the main concern is minutes, just like Jacob Murphy. Difficult to say, I think, but yeah, Cunha's been so good, and he just needs 1 assist, and he can give you 6-7 points easily with the bonus points. But yeah, I'm going to say Cunha here. But then it goes back to that Cunha-Murphy debate, and I'm kind of 50-50 on it right now. Crispy says, my front line is the same as yours. Do you think it's worth transferring any out for Vissa or Watkins? I have 2 free transfers left. Possibly. I think Mateta out for one of those is probably what I do. I still have wildcard and bench boost. Should I use the wildcard this week? Yeah, and then bench boost in 36, and you might get that small double for Aston Villa and Spurs. Thank you, Jonathan. Gracias, Capo. You are the best assistant manager for Pep. Thanks. But what do you think about Moyes with Everton? Well, 2 home games in the next 3 against Ipswich Town and Southampton. I think there's a chance for clean sheets there and a win. In between, though, it's a little bit awkward, you could say, but yeah, Everton have got a lot of draws recently, and I think they could be slightly disappointing in some of these games coming up. But yeah, Pep for me is the best assistant manager. Moyes would be my top 5 for Gameweek 35, but yeah, Pep is definitely my standout pick. Duarte says, good afternoon, Dylan. Watkins in for Mateta or Bowen in for Eze? That is extremely close. I would lean towards Watkins. ARX says bench 1 of Sarr, Mateta, Vissa, and Rodgers. Yeah, Sarr. Not much in it, though. Hey, Dylan, start Eze or Murphy? Eze. I'm not sure if I take a hit for Bowen, unless we knew for sure that Saka was benched. Yeah, I think so, Cunha. Oh, well, I think so, Julian. Always start That bloody rascal Cunha. So yeah, I think him versus Murphy, I'd go for Cunha. That's my final answer. Start Mateta or Sarr. Bloody hell, my light has died on me. Yeah, I'd go for Mateta. Baller says, thanks, Crazy. I didn't know you could change your AM, as I had Frank from last week. Thought he could score big. So I mainly covered this when the chip was first released, and hopefully I can get this. I'll have to do that later. So when you activate the chip, so before you actually confirm the move and the chip, you can basically keep on changing it. And, you know, once you settle on a manager, you confirm the chip, you make the transfer go through, and that is locked in. So the chip is irreversible. And then any change you make from that point onwards, that means it will actually take part of your transfers, and it could even result in hits. But it is a free Gameweek period where the assistant manager is active. So if you activated it last week, that means it will be active for Gameweek 35 and 36, and you can make transfers, and it also takes part of your budget. Once the free Gameweeks is over, that money from the manager, so in your case, Thomas Frank, it will go back to your 50-man squad, so you'll have even more money to spend. Leon says, hello fella, looking at doing Mateta to Vissa to accompany Diaz to Mbuma for -4. Is this a safe enough bet? Yeah, I mean, it's a good set of transfers, but having said that, I don't think Mateta's worth selling for a hit, as good as Vissa is this week. YL says, my team is Raya, Saliba, Livramento, Munoz, Salah, Murphy, Bowen, Mbuma, Rogers, Isagmar, Murphy. Do I captain? Honestly, I think the best advice I can give with the captaincy is try to be different, because a lot of people will probably go for Mbuma, and that is my current #1 pick, but I don't think it's a standout. So it is definitely an opportunity to go different with your transfers and captaincy, and that's the only way you're going to make up rank rises to your mini-league rivals or to get to the standings you want in FPL. So yeah, Mbuma's my favourite captain, but honestly, the best thing to do is back your gut there. Start Kivior or Konsa. Kivior. If I had 2 transfers, I would get Vissa. Yeah, I think Vissa or Bowen would come in for me, or ideally it'd be De Bruyne. That's something I'd be looking at. And if I actually look at my potential moves, if we got any confirmation before the deadline that De Bruyne was starting, I could do something like this potentially. De Bruyne in for Bukayo Saka. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm still some way off from buying Mbuma. But that would be my dream scenario, buying De Bruyne and Mbuma simultaneously. Start Murphy or Rogers? Rogers. Probably next week, Dean. The only concern with that is that he is a bigger rotation risk with Erling Haaland knocking on the door and the FA Cup final on the horizon. Start Munoz or Virgil van Dijk? Munoz. It's not confirmed, Justin. At the moment, there is no double or blank, but there is the possibility that they move the fixture to give Spurs more time to prepare for the Europa League final. Saka to Mbuma, yeah, standard transfer. Nothing really more to say on that. Dogbeat Win says Munoz or Burn? Munoz. Are you making some movies? If so, yeah, I'm making some movies. Yes, I'll be making one move of Saka to Mbuma most likely. Kind of standard template and boring. Maybe I'll do something a bit more fun later on. Play Kepa or Alisson this week, Dylan? Probably Alisson. Matias says, I got 2 free transfers at my AM. Should I buy Bernardo? No, I wouldn't buy Bernardo Silva. It would be Pep Guardiola all day long there. Now, as a Man City option, you could go for Kevin De Bruyne. I'd be on board with that. But Bernardo Silva, definitely not. Yeah, Watkins is certainly decent. I've covered that a lot. Dylan says, good evening, mate. Would you play Flecken or Raya this week? Raya. Bet it's close. My bench boost team for 36 is easy. Yeah, looks pretty decent. We'll see how that transpires, though. Blaine says 2 questions. Bringing in Mbuma or Bowen? Yeah, I'd bring in Bowen. Sorry, I'd bring in Mbuma. No, I wouldn't sell Mateta for a hit. No, I've been very consistent on that. Barra says Rogers or Eze. Already have Watkins. Rogers this week. Bring in Bowen for Murphy or Roll and start Mateta. Start Mateta, I think. Any wildcard updates? Not really. The video was made yesterday. Omar says, hello Dylan, what do you think about Evanussen to Vardy and Marino to Bowen with 2 free transfers, then captain Vardy? Bowen. I wouldn't captain Vardy personally. That could age horribly. He is facing Southampton after all, but he has had a terrible season, and Leicester, they might even lose this game or drop points. So, yeah, I'd rather go for Bowen as a differential captain. But look, if you are feeling Vardy, back your gut. That is the best thing you can do at this stage of the competition. I would start Rodgers over Murphy. Righty9X says, good luck this game, McDillan. I've got a feeling Cunha will get double-digit points tonight. Well, yeah, if you feel that way, he's going to be one of the best captains of the whole week. That's for sure. I don't see many massive returns. Or if there are, they're going to be unexpected. He has never scored against Man City, so it would be quite something. But Cunha has been brilliant this season. Yeah, that's a good one, Vicky. I mean, there is certainly a debate to say KDB, but I also think his minutes are very insecure. And you could say the same about Salah now, but I think he'll still start virtually every single game and try to break as many records as possible. They both start together, Adnan. Ndiaye plays on the left and Beto up front. John Walker says Saka, Isak, Mbeumo and Watkins for -4. I like that. Of course, selling Isak and Saka for a hit is always risky, but the players you're bringing in look really promising. Alright, so I'll catch up to the rest of the comments very soon. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you never miss a single uploaded live stream for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. And check all the links in the description for my X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Discord server, FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'm going to try sort out my light, so if I do sound different, I do apologise, but I'm literally moving about and trying to sort out a dumb little light, which is absolute bastard. Yeah, bastardo, bastardi, whatever. So yeah, hopefully I can get this to work. And yeah, I will keep on answering your questions. Remember, there's going to be more UCL Fantasy videos and live streams very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And woohoo, I've sorted out this bloody dumb light. Who cares? Let's go back to my FPL team, and later on I'll show you the graphics once more. But let's catch up to the chat. Raid says, good luck, Dylan. Your content was outstanding this season. Keep it up. How about Saka to KDB and Savio to Mbeumo for a -4 and captain KDB? Thank you very much for the kind words. I do appreciate it. As for your question, which is a good one, I'd probably do it because I think KDB will start tonight. I don't feel the same way about Saka tomorrow. And with Savio, yes, he may get the nod against Wolves, but what about Southampton and future game weeks? And I think Mbeumo is worth the -4 hit alone. So yeah, I think taking a hit and captaining KDB, great options. I'm very tempted to buy KDB myself and captain him for one last dance. John K88 says, hey Dylan, chance of Marino starting? I don't think he will. I think in the midfield, Arsenal will go for the likes of Zinchenko and go something a little bit different. Tierney at left back, rest some key players. Up front, I think they'll go for Trossard and have Marino ready to play up front against PSG in the second leg. I would start Mateta over Sarr, but up to you. Twan says, hi Dylan, bench 1. Bloody light. I would go for, let's see. I think I would bench Barnes here, but that is a toss-up between him and Murphy. That's sometimes the concern, and apologies for the obtrusive camera work I'm doing, but that's sometimes the concern of having two midfielders from the same team, where you have these kind of benching dilemmas, but there you go. Big Sam says, so Elanga or Murphy for Rodgers? Elanga has better fixtures, but Murphy has brilliant form. I'd probably sell Elanga here at the moment, but that could backfire. I'd keep Mateta, to be honest, for now. In fact, I might even rank Mateta equal or higher than Chris Wood this week, so that's not worth it. Vissa, perhaps, but I'd probably stick with the midfielder move if you want to make it. Bodo says Burn to Brian. Ariel to Pickford, Saka Bowen. Looks solid to me. I think a double up in the Everton defence is also fairly different compared to most people. Well, why don't I have a free hit video? Because it's not a very popular time to free hit. I did it for Gameweek 33 and 34, but I'm sorry to say I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. And there's already quite a lot of effort and work to make the transfer tips, the best wildcard, the team selection, the reaction stream, the UCL fantasy videos that I do. So I try my best, but with the free hit, I kind of typically stick with the popular weeks to free hit, like 29, 33, and 34. Pieter says, good evening. Have you noticed, Dylan, a critical flaw in your team? It doesn't have the league's best right winger, Maguire. thought you were going to say Mbuma for a second. Harry Maguire, let's stop with that. Easy says, I have 111 points, more to go, break my highest points, 2,201. Yeah, you will break that. In that case, who's the better option in Dye or Beto? Well, when Beto was in form, I actually told people to steer clear from him, and ever since I said that, he hasn't scored a single Premier League goal. But, yeah, I think both of them are pretty poor FPL assets, to be honest. But in Dye, he's on penalties. He's also the more talented player, more likely to get bonus points and create something out of nothing. I'd lean towards Ndai, but I'm not a huge fan. Tobias Play says, hi, my name is Thabo. Is there a chance Liverpool might rotate? Yes, I covered that earlier with Arne Slot's press conference. He said he will make changes, but the team will still be good enough to compete. Which obviously, I mean, why would you put a team out to lose? Welcome, Safir, and thank you very much. Watkins captain, right up there for me. Yeah, I can't wait easy, I'm not going to lie. 23 days until Premier League and FPL's over. What's your best moment in FPL and EPL so far? Premier League, not much really. I'll be honest, I haven't really enjoyed the season from the get-go. If I had to pick one moment, it's kind of scraping down the bottom of a barrel, to be honest. Beating Man City 5-1, just a fun night. FPL moment, I'd have to check back to my every single game week, but I think a good one recently is Sessegnon scoring last minute for my free hit. That kind of saved me there in my head-to-head match that I had in a mini-league, and also just getting a nice green arrow. Danny says, start Console Saliba. Savio I'm not a big fan of. Only one goal this season in the Prem as well. Would you take out Bruno or Szoboszlai and replacement Scott and Mbumo? I'd rather take out Szoboszlai. He could actually be one of those players that suffer rotation in the last couple of matches, and I think Bruno Fernandes might also drop to the bench this weekend, but I think he will still get good minutes overall, and he's the better FPL asset from the two. Sell Cunha? Nah, he's a hold, as mentioned before. I've already wildcarded Mosin. Every single chip has been used. Yours is captain. Reluctantly, I'm going to say Mbumo. So yeah, unfortunately this light is dying on me for some reason. I thought it wouldn't actually happen. Maybe... Let's see. Let's try to sort this out. Last one for me, play Kluivert or Sessegnon. Kluivert. Easy says Sells or Flecken to start. Sells. I was keeping bench boost for next week. When is the next best? It's still probably Gameweek 36, but it's team dependent. Like, maybe your team looks better for 37 now, but I couldn't tell you. And I just think there'll be more rotation in 37, and City and Palace are prime examples of that. And you've also got the Europa League final around that time frame and a few other things to think about. My Torres captain was okay in UCL Fantasy, but forgetting to bring in Thuram with the last transfer cost me. Yeah, and actually I was asked a lot about the best defenders. I mentioned Dumfries a lot, and I kind of wish I had that extra transfer to spend to buy Dumfries. That would have been an absolute game changer, but yeah, it was still a decent week. It was a green arrow, and I'll talk about that very soon. Yeah, Joyton, I saw your comment earlier, and no worries about that. I'm glad that you did well. Hassan says, Sarr Bowen and Saka to Mbumo on a free. Yeah, looks good. Would you sell Asensio for a hit? Depends who you're buying in, but if it's De Bruyne, Bowen, Mbumo, I'd go for it, yeah. KK Gaming says pick one of them, Wan-Bissaka, Nico Williams, Livramento. This week, I'd actually go for Wan-Bissaka. I'm backing a 1-0 West Ham win, so why not? That could be wrong. Hopefully I'm not wrong, but there you go. Not like it matters. Ofrione says hi. Hello. MSB10 says Saka, Sarr, and Isak to Mbumo, Bowen, and Watkins for -4. Yeah, looks good. I actually would go for it. Sam says 1 free transfer. As mentioned before, I'd sell Saka. Hey Dylan, thanks for your thoughts on Marino likely being benched, taking him out for KDB for a hit. Really enjoyed your FPL and UCL fantasy content this season. Cheers. I appreciate it, and there is still a chance Marino starts, of course, but I just think it makes a lot of sense for him to be benched here and to start up front against PSG. I mean, he just came off the back of a small injury. He missed Gameweek 33 against Palace, the second game of that double Gameweek anyway. Would you sell Savio for Bowen or just start Rodgers in case Savio doesn't start? I do like that Bowen transfer, but I think Rodgers is a good option. In fact, I'd probably recommend starting Rodgers anyway. I'd start Murphy over Marino there. Data Ross. Twister Parky says, my best moment was Glasner 20 points. Oh, yeah, don't remind me. The only time I've gone mental watching Palace, some hauls of Salah and Mbuma when low earned was nice. Yeah, like, I'll be honest, a lot of the points I've gotten, like Arne Slot as my assistant manager, I'm not going to celebrate their points, so it's just, yeah. I don't really celebrate FPL points very often, or UCL Fantasy. But yeah, that's why I just said the Sessignon one. It's just the recent one that came to mind, but I never celebrated, per se. Baller says, Szoboszlai replacements at the budget he's at. Yeah. I mean, Rodgers is kind of template, but he would stand out alongside Murphy. I like Eze, but there could be rotation there. This is about the only time I've not bought Dumfries, every Champions League season and always for the Netherlands. Yeah, I always miss his big returns in Euros, World Cup and UCL Fantasy. He's very annoying. Bench 1, Rodgers, Kluivert or Cunha. Reluctantly, it would be Kluivert. Yeah, I think Saka's a sell. Best replacements include Mbeumo, De Bruyne and Bowen in that order. Matthias says best pick instead of Savinho. I got 8.9 million, but have to buy Pep at AM. I would have said Bowen, but to buy him and Pep, I don't think you can do it. That's a big shame. Juan says, hi Dylan, what would you do if defending rank? Sell Palmer to Mbeumo or go YOLO, sell Palmer to KDB? Well, if you're defending rank, I think the answer is simple. You go to Mbeumo, but there are different ways of playing the game, and ultimately you don't want to lose sight of what you've been doing this season to get to the rank that you're at right now, that you're seemingly, you know, desperate to protect. So I think they're both good options. I think Mbeumo KDB is quite close this week, but because of minutes and future Gameweeks as well, and the safety and reliability of Mbeumo, I'd go for him instead. Sam says, should I sell someone for Visser? I have Isak, Cunha, Marmoush. Probably not. I think this week Visser's better than Cunha, but I think Cunha's one of those players you don't want to sell or bench, really. If I use free hit last game week, shouldn't the free transfer have carried forward like they do for the wildcard? I'm fairly sure they should have, but I've seen a lot of people say in the live chats that it hasn't been the case and they've been reset to 1. Noam says, Savio or Sarr to start if I'm chasing rank and 50 points behind first in my mini league. Well, then you go for Savio, lower ownership, better fixture on paper, but it's a close one. Mateta or Visser? I prefer Visser this week. They're both very close overall. Big Sam says bench 1. Kirkes. That's a very difficult one, but yeah, Kirkes. P. Marsh says sell Saka or Palmer to Mbeumo. I'd sell Saka. Got Sarr on the bench. Steven says Saka and Marino to Mbeumo and Bone for a hit. Yeah, I'd keep it simple. I wouldn't go for triple Arsenal defence. Even this week, I'm not sure about it. I think Bournemouth score. Then you've got Liverpool away and Newcastle at home. So my advice is to trim that down. For this week, go for a double up. I think that's fine. But in future weeks, I'd trim that down to 0 or 1 in your starting 11. But keeping 2 for Gameweek 38 against Southampton is a good idea. But in terms of tripling up every week, that is not what I'd recommend at all. Munoz or Murillo? Munoz. Juntal says Murphy, Eze, Rodgers to Bowen and bench who? Maybe I'd sell Eze there. And bench who? Well, I'd start Rodgers this week. Savio Sarr covered. Sell Mateta for Visser or Wood. I'd keep Mateta personally. If you really want to make a transfer, then I'd buy Visser. Start Burns or Rodgers. Morgan Rodgers. Matthias says I got 2 free transfers. KK came in, says let's not do triple Ks there. KK Gaming says best captain this week in your opinion. There's not really a standout. I've said Mbeumo. That's probably what I'd go for, and I did cover the graphics earlier. I'll show it later in the stream as well. Thanks, mate. I'm new to the channel. Thank you, Noam. Sell Saka to Mbeumo? Yes. Should I sell Saka to KDB or Raul to Visser? Saka to KDB. Is it a good choice? I'd start Milenkovic personally over Saliba, but good choices overall. Would you activate bench boost on Kepa, Ruben Dias, Konsa and Kluivert? It's not a bad bench, to be fair. I think Diaz and Cliver alone could save your bench there. But yeah, I don't know. For a lot of people, I would recommend Gameweek 36 bench boost still, but it is team dependent. I think in your situation, it's worth using it now. You'll probably get more points than I did in a double game week. Burn to O'Brien or Mateta to Watkins? Burn to O'Brien. So yeah, from those three, I would play Rodgers and Cunha and Saliba there, Terry. Very nice person, Music says, I have 2 free transfers. Should I transfer in Bowen and Gvardiol or Bowen and De Bruyne for a differential? Backline is currently Raya, Munoz, Burn and Kanate. Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, all of the moves are looking very solid. My favourite would be Bowen and De Bruyne, but I also don't know who you're selling, which does play a part. Top 3 managers for the chip. Guardiola, Thomas Frank and Oliver Glasner. You can wait until next week, but I don't know. I'd probably just use it now. Alfred says start 1 in each. Saliba, Aina, or Munoz, and Mateta or Sarr. Munoz and Mateta. My forwards, Marmush, Mateta, Vissa. Should I take a hit? No, not for me. I have bench boost and assistant manager. I'd probably use assistant manager now and bench boost 38. Now, you could even use bench boost now and assistant manager 36, but that's literally the only options you have, unless you want to lose a week from the most powerful chip in the short term. If your bench is looking good this week, mate, use it now and use the assistant manager next week, but I can't really say without knowing your team. Sell Larson for Cunha, yeah. Or you can go to Chris Wood. This is my favourite, I think, to buy right now. Bench 1, Mateta, Murphy, Rodgers. I would bench Murphy reluctantly. John Davis says, who's your captain? It's probably going to be Mbuma. Do you think PSG will steal the UCL this season? Hopefully not. I do think Barcelona, if they go through, will win it. But I have other hopes, of course, which hopefully do come to fruition. But that's a very big if. Sam says, my 4 defenders, Raya, Saliba, Gvardiol, Ruben Diaz. Should I drop Saliba for Munoz? Yeah, I would. Relax Gamer says, hey mate, I have to free transfer, sell Bruno to Saka. I will not be buying Saka. And Dan Burn to Milenkovic China. I'd sell Bruno, but to one of De Bruyne, Mbeumo, and Bowen. Choose one to bench, Mateta, Bruno, Rodgers. Probably Bruno Fernandes. Thank you, Omar. Good luck as well. As covered before, Joyton. Kind of standard. I'll let the graphics do the talking, basically. But yeah, I'm going to go through all the graphics one more time. Zetlin says Mbeumo and Bowen for Saka and Murphy. Sarr or Bowen and Mbeumo for Murphy, Sarr and Vissa for Mateta. I would go for the first set of moves. Is selling Saka to Mbeumo worth it? I think so, Riyadh. Gaming says Mikalenko and Mbeumo in for Robinson and Saka -4 hit. Yeah, it can be worth it. I'm just a bit skeptical about taking hits for a defender, even though Everton have a decent chance of a clean sheet this week. Reddit says, I own Eze, Sarr and Mateta. Would you sell Eze, Sarr or Semenyo to bring Mbeumo in? I'd probably sell Sarr and diversify your team a little bit. But that is a good question. I think from those 3, Eze is my favourite. And as frustrating as Semenyo can be, I'd rather sell Ismaila Sarr, I believe. Bench 1, Mateta, Sarr, Savio, Rodgers. Sarr. Watkins or Vissa? Watkins. Selling Palmer for Bowen and would sell Konate to Gvardiol or Murphy to De Bruyne. Let me go to the other screens, by the way, whilst I answer some questions. They won't be shown on screen because they will interfere with the graphics, but these are my predictions that you can see now. And you did see my transfer plan earlier of Mbeumo in for Saka. Very boring. I might even go a little bit different and, you know, take a -4 here and buy Bowen at least for one of Sarr, Eze? I don't even have Eze. Sarr, Murphy, or Rodgers. Now, I think Sarr will be the most likely to make way. Now, you just saw Watkins there as the highlighted 1-week punt, and also the clean sheet odds can be seen on screen with City, Everton, Villa, Arsenal, Brentford, and Palace in the top 6. Wolves are bottom, and in terms of scoring over 2 goals, Man City are top, and you've also got Everton and Brentford in the podium, and the likes of Villa are up there. Arsenal, not very promising from the attack, and I do think 1-1 is very likely. So KDB is starting apparently, says Sakib. If you've got a link or a source, then let me know and we can go through it. But that is obviously good to know for those with Kevin De Bruyne. Thank you, Joyton. Ahmed says sells Fabianski to Pickford, Kirkes, Cucurella, Munoz, Mikalenko, Nouri, Rogers and Bumo, Salah, Bowen, Isak, Cunha, Evanussen to Vissa. My AM is Howe for -8. Not sure about Eddie Howe as the AM this week. My favourites, as I mentioned before, would include Pep Guardiola, who's number 1. Then you're looking at Thomas Frank, Glasner, and David Moyes. KFC Boy says Saka to Mbumo, Raya to Pickford. Or get Livramento out instead. Saka to Mbumo. Do you think Flecken or Sells keep a clean sheet? Neither, as you saw in my predictions just now. I did go for 1-1 in the Forest game and 3-1 Brentford. But I think Flecken has a better saves potential at the moment. It is close, but I would go for Sells personally. Better chance of a clean sheet. Next FPL season will be different. How to use the first wildcard, especially with AFCON, and how we potentially use AFCON players in FPL. There might be something to it. Every season is different, to be fair. But we won't know until we see the prices and how things are shaped up, if we get any new chips, and if the assistant manager stays and stuff like that. But it should be interesting. Let me show you the rest of these graphics before going to the other questions. So the top 10 captaincy options, which have been asked about a lot in this stream. Whilst there isn't a standout, Mbumo is currently number 1 in my list for the first time this season, by the way. Marmoush is 2nd, De Bruyne is 3rd, Isak, Salah, Vissa, Watkins, Bowen, Trossard and Saka are in the top 10, but Saka I don't think will start, to be honest. Yeah, Josh, the deadline is in less than an hour, in, 49 minutes time? Any essentials? Players, not really. I think it's very important to go different and not just follow the rest of the crowd. I'm just going for a player that I think will do really well for the next 4 game weeks, and I'm kind of limited in my funds, but maybe I think De Bruyne could be a very good pick for me. It's just a shame I can't buy Mbumo and De Bruyne simultaneously. That will be my high recommendation to people watching. Yeah, Bowen captain is fine. You can just see him in the list right now. He's 8th. You could arguably put him higher. I think Watkins definitely deserves a top spot there. Bench 1 of Saar, Marino, Rogers, Mateta. I would bench Marino. Omar Salazar says, would you do Munoz to Gvardiol? If you can afford Wan-Bissaka or Livramento out to Gvardiol, I'd rather do that long term. I don't think so, Cooker, but someone in the live chat has said, and I'm not sure how reliable it is, that De Bruyne starts. I'll have a look now on Twitter and verify the source myself. Let's see if I can get the source here. So yeah, if you do have a link to that, and I did ask the person earlier, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to do it, then just leave in the live chat and we can go through that source. But I don't see anything online that suggests that De Bruyne is definitely starting. So thank you to those that have liked the stream and have supported the channel across all the UCL Fantasy and FPL videos. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and let's make a late push towards 33,000 subscribers, which we should achieve by the Tuesday deadline stream in UCL Fantasy. We're actually 44 away from 33k subscribers, so we'll be reaching that very soon. And also we are around 100 members on YouTube, and the same goes for Patreon. We've got a lot of members there, so thank you very much to those that have tuned in. It is very much appreciated, and let's keep on going and growing these social media platforms. You can find my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And when I say X, I'm not talking about XX, you know, we're talking about Twitter. Bloody Twitter. Thank you very much to Elon Musk. Bench Martinez or Raya? Raya. Bowen or Isak captain? Isak. Just a small prediction and recommendation, so if you remember it, Everton defence could be a huge bargain. Well, I think that's nothing surprising. I think what would have been like a, I don't know, a small prediction, or how you put it, is if you think, oh, Everton will let people down, because I am seeing people talk about double or triple ups in their defence. This as captaincy option, once more, you can see on screen. I don't know what else I can really say. He's not going to be in the top 10 if he's a mug. Hi, Dylan, would you do Bruno to KDB for a -4? I would, yeah. Hassan says maybe it's United bias, but there's no way I'm captaining Mbumo against us after yesterday. Yeah, I think there might be an element of that, to be fair, but yeah, Brentford have a bad record against United. They've only battered them once, and that was under Ten Hag. But yeah, Like I said, Mbuma's not locked in for the captaincy for me. Hurstler is a good shout for AM. We have a good record versus Newcastle and beat them twice so far this season. Not confident though, and key players are out. Yeah, I've gone for 2-2 for that reason, but I'm still starting Isak and Murphy. Thank you, Josh. Really glad I got a notification you were live. Good luck this week. Yeah, I have seen people talk about the inconsistencies of the YouTube notifications, but it should work most of the time, and I'm glad to hear that you have tuned in. Captain Mbeumo, Marmoush, Salah, De Bruyne. Well, you can see my list on screen, so I don't think I need to really say it one more time, but despite the fact that Mbeumo's top, I might go go for something a little bit different, to be honest. Sam says Rodgers for Barnes and Hal for Pep, worth it for -4. Yeah, I think it's worth it. Yeah. Lyle says, which AM should I pick for this game week? I think Guardiola. Once more here, my favourite AM or choice for the assistant manager is Guardiola. FPL Cortex says also start Nico Williams or Ait Nuri. Nico Williams. I don't think Wolves keep a clean sheet, and then you're relying on attack and returns, which Ait Nuri is certainly capable of, but yeah, I still think City will win that game. Let me also show the injury updates once more. I'm not going to read them out because I've done that earlier in this stream, so for the sake of repetition, just feel free to pause, rewind, and all that good stuff. You just saw the captaincy list, so hopefully we don't get any more captaincy questions for a little bit. And I also showed my team selection graphics, which indicate my current transfer plans, which is very simple, basic template of Saka to Mbeumo. I might do something a little left field to diversify myself from the rest of the pack because, yeah, we are gravitating towards the same players and clubs at the moment, which isn't great to see. Yeah, I would play Munoz there, DNNN. Ait Nuri to start or Konsa. In this scenario, I would maybe go for Ait Nuri because I think both concede. I think Villa have the better chance of a clean sheet, but yeah, I think Konsa will blank. Yeah, I think Saka won't start the game, but he'll get 20 to 30 minutes off the bench. That's my opinion on it. Perez says start Raya or Sells, and Wood or Murphy. Sells and Chris Wood. Double C defense, Cavadio of Ruben. Looks good for Gameweek 36, but not this week. I think Wolves will score. Ahmed says, I made a -8. Do I need additional -4 to change how to Guardiola? I would do it, personally. I think Guardiola will justify that hit over the next couple of game weeks, and I think Newcastle could drop points this weekend. -4 for Watkins in for Isak or Mateta. Out of those two, I'd still rather sell Mateta. And yeah, as I just showed you there, maybe a bit of context might need to be provided, so let me skim forward here. So, all fixtures currently remain in Gameweek 37. That is the most likely scenario, but we are still getting reports of Villa, Spurs going into Gameweek 36. So bear that in mind. That will give Spurs extra prep time for the Europa League final. So it looks like they're putting a lot of pressure on the Premier League to get that game rescheduled. So that would mean a double for Aston Villa and Spurs, and that could maybe change things for those with a chip remaining, like the bench boost. But yeah, I'd argue it's probably worth keeping what you have there instead of buying Watkins for a hit. As much as I like Watkins this week, should I say? Would I start cash? Not necessarily. Will Savio play? I'm unsure on that. Will Savio play? I don't think he starts the next 2 games in the Premier League. But let's actually have a look at a Man City predicted lineup and see what they're going for. Okay, so there's one by Standard Sport. And let's see if I can get there. So yeah, they're not going for Savio in the lineup. They're going for Doku, De Bruyne, and Marmoush as the front three. But that's obviously just one predicted lineup. Let's see what C Extra are saying, even though they only compile information. They're not a source in of itself. So, let's see. Yeah, they think Savio starts here. They think Savio, Foden, De Bruyne, and Marmoush. It's difficult to say, but all I can really say with authority is that I don't think Savio starts the next 2 games in the Premier League. and that could still age horribly wrong. Yeah, Ortega should play there, Sam. I would start Ortega over Alisson. KFC Boy says Cunha or Vissa for Evanosson. I prefer Vissa right now. I don't think Damsgaard is really worth it now. He showed a lot of form earlier this season, but look, he's a differential. I just haven't seen enough from him individually to really like advocate for him. Boeing Captain, what do you think? He's in the top 10 in my list. If you rewind just a few minutes, you can see my captaincy list. So yeah, I think he's a good option. When to triple captain, it could really be at any point now. I probably wouldn't do it this week personally because I'm less convinced about the captaincy options. If I still had the chip, I'd probably use in phase 6 or phase 7, assuming you have no other chips remaining to, you know, possibly clash with it. I am Monson says bench 1. Consa. Twisted Parky says Salah, Saka, Rogers, Sarr, Murphy and mid. Saka and Sarr out for Bowen and Boomer -4. Yes, looks good to me. Now, I might end up keeping Sarr and not taking a hit because I've also got Murphy and a few other options there in my midfield who I'm probably going to bench anyway if I get rid of Sarr. So, yeah, it is team dependent, but good transfers overall. Lager says Saka to KDB, Diaz to Mbeumo, and Mateta to Watkins from -4. Once again, I really like those transfers. I have no issues with that whatsoever. Beta AA says, what do you think of Saka, Mateta out for Mbeumo and Watkins? I'm a bit against selling Mateta for a hit, but I do like Watkins. I think he's worth the -4. I would go for it, but you don't need to sell Mateta. Mitra says, start Sarr or Mateta. I would go for Mateta, and with the captaincy, Mbeumo is top of my list, Marmoush is second, and KDB is third of all players. So that is how I'd rank it at the moment, but I am tempted to captain someone else instead of Mbeumo. Yeah, Paredes, I did answer your question earlier, mate. It's just not highlighted on screen because it's a different setup and scene. I wouldn't start Matty Cash necessarily. Gigs Not Pig says, Yo Dylan, Vissa and Mbeumo for Sarr and Isak have free transfers, thanks. Yeah, looks good overall. My only slight concern is selling Isak. Is Edison starting? No. As far as I'm aware, it's going to be Ortega. I don't think Salah's a sell, but I understand why you think that. I would play Rogers there, Nuclear. Yeah, Saka to Mbeumo, solid, standard, nothing really special. I'm also looking at the same thing. And speaking of which, I'm going to go to my FPL team now and try to lock in some transfers and do the usual polls that I like to have on this channel. So thank you to those that have sent in super chats. We have hit the goal. So I will be going live for a little bit longer if people are still here. And yeah, we got it just in time. So thank you very much. No worries, Paredes. You wouldn't start Cash because of expected mins. Well, I also don't think Villa keep a clean sheet. I don't trust their defense in general. I've gone for 3-1 Villa. Yeah, I think Nico Williams is better this week. And Kirkus has the attacking threat. So I would rank both of them higher than Matty Cash, arguably. Yeah, Edison is currently injured. Yeah. No, I think he's on the bench now. No, I think he's just on the bench. I don't think he's injured. Let me actually, let's see. We are getting a lot of Ortega questions, which is surprising. So let's go through that City lineup again and see what they're going for. So give me a second. So City Extra have gone for Ortega Moreno. Oh, no, sorry. No. They're going for Edison in their lineup, and they're going for Ortega on the bench. Interesting. So, yeah. We'll see. I'm also going to get another predicted lineup out and see what they think. Yeah, this one by standard, the standard, have Ortega in the lineup. So, yeah, it looks like no one knows for sure. That can definitely be said. Let's see if I've got any other updates. No, I think I've basically covered all the updates from the press conferences with the graphics, and then I mentioned the other ones that came in over the last hour. So yeah, those are worth closing now. All right, I'm going to put a poll out on my channel and see what you lot are saying. So let's get this up. Thank you, Lager, for moderating the chat. I appreciate it. The same goes to all moderators. Let's keep things civil here. So let's put Sar and yeah, Moses. I'm sorry, mate. You're not gonna have your question answered like that. Yeah, it's yeah. All right, so let's get this show on the road. I will be answering the questions and comments that have just been posted, so be patient. Let's put Sar and Saka. No, that is the wrong set of commands there. All right, let's see if that works. All right. Let's go to Bowen and Mbumo, -4. And then just Saka to Mbumo. De Bruyne as well, very tempting. To Mbumo, and another one I'm looking at, and I think I'm going to avoid the forward transfers. Don't tell me the thing crashed. Jesus. Yeah. I wouldn't rule out completely a defender move. So doing something like Saliba or Livramento to O'Brien, and then going for a back four. Raya to Pickford isn't too shabby. But yeah, that's probably pushing it a little bit. All right, so let me put this poll out and let's get back to the questions. Let's do Saka to Bowen as well. So quite a simple poll. They're all very similar moves. And let's see what people are saying. We'll start with the members first. So Abhishek says, is Watkins worth a punt in a Gameweek 35 wildcard with Villa having a slight chance of a double Gameweek and Rashford being injured? Absolutely. And the latest update by Unai Emery suggests that he is definitely out for tomorrow and he could make it for the last game or two in the Premier League, but it isn't a guarantee. So yeah, I think Watkins is definitely worth a punt. Liam says, hi Dylan, 7 points behind in the mini league. They have Mbumo. Should I transfer in Mbumo or Bowen for Saka? Yeah, good question. And you do want to go different to people who are ahead of you in the mini league to claw up the deficit, but I do think Mbumo is worth it. I really do. And if you do have differentials elsewhere, and maybe they'll captain Mbumo whilst you captain somebody else, I think that's fine. So on the face of it, I'd still go for Brian Mbumo, but it's a very close one. I don't think there's a clear standout for the captaincy this week. Yeah, easy. I covered FPL Challenge earlier. I got 49, I think, and it wasn't great, but yeah, basically Mbumo was a bit of a letdown with the yellow card. Yeah, I think so, Tustapaki, in your situation, but it is something I'm considering myself. My issue with selling Sar and Saka to Bowen and Mbumo for a hit is I would still have a decent bench player. So if you look at my bench now, I've got Sar, Saliba, and Livramento. So buying Mbumo and Bowen, both of them start alongside Rodgers, and then one of Murphy or... Well, Salah definitely starts, of course. But yeah, I'm looking at one of Murphy or Rodgers on the bench. I'm not a big fan of that. Maybe Mateta as well. But yeah, Bowen can definitely score and get a decent bonus points against Spurs, but I don't see a high ceiling. Yeah, I think that's fair to Stupaki. He's only got one goal against United in his career. And I did say that in my videos recently and in today's stream. Let me actually get up his exact record, because I think it's very poor. It's like 1 goal in 12 games or something. Let's see. Bloody adverts. So Mbumo has 1 goal in 7 Premier League games against Man United. And that was in a 4-0 win. a few years ago. And to be fair, I mean, Brentford's record against United is poor. 1 win, 1 draw, 5 losses. But this will be slightly different. Brentford are the better team right now, and also United will be focusing more on the Europa League semi-final despite their commanding lead. I would start Mateta there over Jacob Murphy. Nef ZZ says Mbeumo and Vissa in for Sarr and Mateta. Probably going to bench boost in 37. Right. I do like those transfers. But I also think with Mateta, you could hold on to him. Hello, Dylan. Start Mateta or Murphy. Once more, I'd go for Mateta. Best assistant manager. Well, my favourite is Pep Guardiola, but since you've tripled up already, I'd be looking at Thomas Frank. I think David Moyes as well. Have 2 transfers, or do I delay for next week? Maybe delay until next week and then buy Pep Guardiola. That's another option for you. Yeah, Trossard can be a differential. He is 9th on my captaincy list. Savio to Burn for a hit. Not sure if I'd do it for a hit. Especially if you have a decent option on the bench. Is selling Sarr or Murphy to Bowen? I'd rather sell Sarr. And if you can do it for free, I'd recommend it. But in my case, it'd be for a hit. Yeah, exactly that, Twister Parky. Bowen's record isn't that good against Spurs, which is why I'm not completely convinced about taking a hit for that sort of move. I believe he has 2 goals and 1 assist against Spurs. I'm going to double check that for you, although you probably know anyway, but just for anyone else who is unaware. Yeah, Bowen has 1 goal and 1 assist against Spurs in the Premier League. He has scored once against them in the Carabao Cup. So yeah, in 12 appearances, 2 goals, 1 assist. And in home matches, he has never scored against Tottenham Hotspur. Both his goals were in the shithole. No offense to any Spurs fans watching, but we all know what it is. Assistant manager says Roman TV, Pep Guardiola. John says Vissa captain. He is in the top 7 of my list, so he's a good option. Thank you, John. As he says, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Start Sarr or Murphy? Murphy. Ashwin says took a -8. Saka, Rashford, Mateta, Mbeumo, Bowen and Watkins. 548k right now. Season ending, so time to have some fun. Exactly that. And I do like those moves overall. Mateta could burn, but I think it will pay off. Let me put it that way. And Saka shouldn't get good minutes, in my opinion, against Bournemouth. Banerjee says Isak, Marmoush, Salah, Saka, KDB, top 3 for captaincy. Well, I did cover the graphics multiple times. I'll do it probably once more before the deadline. So from those lot, Marmoush is top, KDB second, Isak is 3rd, Salah 4th, and Saka 5th. Cherry says, hey, I'm on wildcard. Should I get Isak or Watkins? I'd go for Watkins, and I'd also encourage you to check out my best wildcard team video that I published yesterday. Another question, surprise captain. Surprise captain, Vissa, since everyone's talking about Mbeumo. Martinez or Sells? Sells. Hassan says Munoz to Milenkovic. No, I'd keep Munoz for now. Double Everton or double City defence? Double Everton. A7 Mad says Mateta to Watkins -4. I like Watkins a lot, but I wouldn't sell Mateta for a hit. Yeah, Robinson should start Alfred. I did cover the injury updates earlier, and Marco Silva said that Robinson is in contention. Eze to Bowen? Yeah. Saka and Mateta out, Mbeumo and Watkins in. They are definitely good moves. Once more, though, with Mateta, I think he's a decent option this week. Thank you, Cherry. Play Burn or Konsa? Konsa. I think your Born is a great captain because the Tottenham will be in high rotation and huge spaces in the defence. I'm guessing that's Bowen. Right? Good point. If I bring Bowen in for Sarr or Murphy, I have to bench 1. If it wasn't for that, and I can buy Bowen for free, I'd buy him. You know, let me not get that twisted. In an ideal world, I'd be getting De Bruyne and Mbeumo this week, but it's just not possible. I get that, Lager. This week, I do favour Watkins a little bit more, but it does seem like fine margins. In both matches, I've gone for a 3-1 home win. Start Cunha or Szoboszlai or neither and buy Rodgers. Start Cunha. I think Rodgers is the best this week, though, of the 3, for what it's worth. Should I bench 8 Nuri? Wolves maybe concede, but potentially a return is high. Depends who you're benching him for. But if you're looking at Munoz, Milenkovic, Gvardiol, I'd definitely start those three. Even Saliba, I'd probably go for the Arsenal defenders, except Timber, who I don't think starts. But then if you're looking at Kirkes, for example, or maybe you're talking about, I don't know, Konsa, I think I'd probably go for 8 Nuri in that scenario. Lager with the nice emojis there. Faris says -8, Kanate, Saka, Eze, Mateta out, Diaz, Mbumo, Bowen, Watkins in. I'm a bit unsure about Diaz, but he is an upgrade on Kanate. Overall, I'd say yes. I don't think Saka will start, no. Sam says, is it worth buying Isak now for Mateta or Watkins, or hold on to both? Hold on to both. I would play Raya over Pope there, Leonardo. Milenkovic for me, X2, Wheelos. Whoa, let's just say boarding. A7 Mad says, play Savio or Sarr. I'd chance on Savio, but I'm not sure if he starts. I would play Munoz over Milenkovic. I'm going for a 1-1 draw. I think a 0-0 isn't completely out of the question, and Munoz has more avenues to points. Derek Kiprono says, Saka to Mbumo and Rashford to Trossard. Looks good to me. And Trossard is 9th in my list. I think he'll start up front. But I'm also kind of thinking, why not Bowen? I think long-term he's better than Trossard. Yeah, Watkins is right up there, Ashwin. I'm sorry. I have covered this a lot of times already. He is in my top 7 for the captaincy list. He was also featured in my transfers video as a 1-week punt, and also in my graphics for the gimmick analysis when I was talking about the team weakness for Fulham, and then Ollie Watkins being featured there. Festus says, how come you're playing Munoz and Milenkovic? Well, they can coexist at the same time. I actually did something similar a few years ago with the same fixture, actually, and it ended 0-0. It'd be more concerning if I had a Forest attacker against a Palace defender or vice versa. But yeah, they can both work at the same time. And ultimately, I think it's not a bad pair of defenders this week. John says Vissa is the obvious captain this game week. Well, he's in my top 7. And I mentioned this earlier, if Mbumo is being talked about so much, why not Vissa, who's been very consistent? I can't really give you a Man City lineup, Aviad, just a prediction. I did mention a few lineups there by the standard and also City Extra, but yeah, don't get that twisted in response to Twisted. Oh wow, that's subconscious there. I didn't even notice. Vissa as captain, good option. He's not far off Mbumo. In fact, I think he's not. You could argue he's level or better, but I think Mbumo has the advantage as a midfielder and being on penalties. ANWR says Saka to Bowen and Sarr to Mbumo and Mateta to Wood for free. I would make the first 2 transfers and I'd keep Mateta and not buy Chris Wood. Murphy, Rogers and Mbumo start 2. Rogers and Mbumo. Thank you, Sam. OK Organ says take out Salah and Mateta for Mbumo and Vissa. I'm not sure about selling Salah still, and even with Mateta, I like him. Good transfers in, but you're also taking out some good FPL assets. Marino or Rogers for starting 11? Rogers. Larkin says start 2. I would start Munoz and Saka, but there's a big chance that Saka doesn't start, so take that into account. If I had Savio, I'd probably sell him, especially for those that have the AM still available. I think keeping that spot open for Guardiola looks great. I do like KDB, so triple captain, I wouldn't rule it out. It's just this week I'm not as bullish or convinced about the captaincy in general. I think it's very open. But KDB is one of the standouts, and I think he will start. Bowen as a captain, he's in my top 8. He only has 1 goal against Spurs in the Premier League, which is quite surprising actually, and he has never scored against them in home matches. And my main concern with Bowen as a captain is West Ham, because they are so inconsistent. Benguino says, still got Kirkes, do I sell? If so, who to? You can keep him for Gameweek 38 against Leicester at home, but there's always Milenkovic, there's Munoz. 8 Nuri is decent. An Arsenal defender is still not too shabby for Gameweek 38, but not really any need to do that sort of move. I think Kirkes to Saliba. unless you're really bullish on Arsenal keeping a clean sheet this week. I think you probably go to an Everton defender like O'Brien. Surrender says -4 for Saka to Mbumo and Rashford to Bowen. Yes, I would do that. But if you do have a solid midfielder or player on your bench, why not save the hit, not buy Bowen, and then just roll with that? And that's something that I'm finding myself in at the moment with my current transfer plans. So let's make this move. Saka out to Mbumo. Now, I did see one predicted lineup for Arsenal that had Saka in it, but most of them have Wanyeri starting instead, with Raheem Sterling and Trossard as the kind of potential front three. I think Marino will be safe for the Champions League, and he'll play down the middle there. But yeah, I think Mbumo, very boring and standard, but I am going to bring him in, cover the template, so to speak, and that is my current thinking. Welcome, Genius Gamer. Good to see you. Thank you, Ashwin, and good luck for Gameweek 35. Preston, I would bench Eze. I would bring in Pep Guardiola, Tony. De Bruyne. De Bruyne is better than Foden right now. Rabin. Saka, Foden to Mbumo. I'd probably sell Saka first. Sarr or Larson? Bench one. Larson. He did score against City earlier this season, but yeah, I'd bench Larson. Soon, Tuan, don't worry. I always make it on time. Livramento or Kirkes? Livramento. Who to get until the end of the season? Well, Chris Wood's form has been quite poor, actually, and Forest have been completely off it. But they do have the better fixtures. I'd go for Cunha. That's a possible change from my wildcard video yesterday as well. Lulian says Gavadio plus Areola versus Ruben and Sells. Ruben and Sells. XY Linos7 says Kivior, Wan-Bissaka, Gavadio, Milenkovic, Munoz my back five. I would start Gavadio, Milenkovic, and Munoz. Zakif says start Bradley or Konsa. I have cash in the starting 11. Or sell Kusanov to Gavadio. Yeah, I would buy Josko Gavadio. Let me just get my chat up. It is freezing at the moment. But yeah, I think Mbumo in for Saka is coming in any second now. And in the poll, it is leading only just with 43%. Then in second, you've got Bowen and Mbumo for a -4 hit. But yeah, I'm going to lock this one in for now at least. Mbumo in for Saka. And I did miss out on that price change yesterday. But there you go. Mbumo's in. With the captaincy, though, I'm not going to lie. Marmoush is still very tempting for me. But for now, I'm going to do this. I'm very, very tempted about Marmoush here. It just seems like a lot of people are going for Mbumo. And with only one goal in 7 appearances against United, that's a pretty poor record. You would have expected much better than that. Even Bowen, 2 goals, 1 assist in 12 appearances across all competitions. Only 1 Premier League goal against Tottenham Hotspur. None at home. Not that encouraging, actually. Play Milenkovic or Livramento. Milenkovic. On a wild card, probably Martinez. There's not really much difference anyway. He is in bad form, by the way. Juniper says freezing. No, it's freezing. My laptop is freezing, basically, or more so the chat. The actual tab I have when I'm choosing the messages. Yeah, it is quite warm in here, which is why I've got a fan on. Who to start, Kivior or Dean? I have Raya as my goalkeeper. I'd still start Kivior, I think. But I completely get if you want to start Luka Dean. I don't think it's a bad idea. Best captain this week, I think, is between Mbumo, Marmoush, and De Bruyne. Wood or Visser? Visser. But Mbumo captain over Marmoush, too risky. At 12k overall, don't want to drop too much and risk 10k. From what I'm aware of, it does seem like Mbumo is the template captain. I'll be honest, I am looking at captaining Marmoush over him. And I think that record against United does put me off. But I think the captaincy will be quite split in general. So I don't think there's really a kind of safe, guaranteed route to points this week, as we have pretty much experienced all season. Adilov says KDB or Marmoush captain if both start. From that perspective, I'd maybe lean towards KDB. And I think he will start. Leonardo says Marmoush kind of not doing much right now either. Well, that's what I mean. There's not a standout option for the captaincy. Start Canate or Livramento. Livramento. Bruno Fernandes to burn for -4. I'm not sure if I'd do that. Best midfielder up to 6.1 million for Gameweek 36. Rodgers. Areola or Raya. I think this week, actually, I'd go for Areola, which sounds crazy. Kaio says Sarr to Bowen versus Rodgers to Bowen. And what do you think about Forest attack and defender assets? I'd still go for 2 assets, I think. Maybe 3 as a push, which I highlighted in yesterday's wildcard video. I would rather sell Sarr and keep Rodgers. And with Forest, I'd rather go for one of Sells or Milenkovic, maybe even both. I'm less keen on Elanga and Chris Wood as things stand, but all of their assets are less appealing right now. I think 2 is the sweet spot with Forest. Start Mateta or Rodgers? Rodgers. Maybe Leonardo, maybe, but he has a bad record at Stamford Bridge. He's never scored it there, I think, in a Liverpool shirt. Welcome Adil. Start Saliba or Kivior. Not much in it. I think Saliba's better for bonus points, but in recent weeks, Kivior has been performing better. Maybe based on form, you go for Kivior. Bring in Bumo, but captain Rodgers. Not a bad idea. I don't think Rodgers is a bad shout for the captaincy, actually. It's not really a standout, unfortunately. Johnny Love says start one of Dean, Livramento, Wan-Bissaka. Rustam says Martinez and Canate or Raya plus Konsa. Raya and Konsa. Get Bowen for Palmer. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't think Saka will start, which is why I sold him. Rodgers or Sarr? Rodgers. Isak is 4th in my captaincy list, but just like the others I mentioned, not a great record against Brighton. 1 goal in 5 appearances against the Seagulls. So, yeah, there's not really any guaranteed captaincy options here. Let's see. Just checking now. There's nothing really in terms of leaks or anything like that, but if there is something, I will keep you updated. Hi Dylan, Saka to Bowen or De Bruyne? I'd take a punt on De Bruyne. He's riskier though, so I think Bowen is the safer pick, but I would go for De Bruyne. Watkins from Mateta for -4? No. No. The best manager for the assistant manager chip is Pep Guardiola. Milenkovic or Trippier? Milenkovic. Yeah, I think Isak always has a high ceiling, but his recent returns haven't been that great. Thank you, John David. Going for an aggressive captain with Mateta this game week. I hope he does well. I really do. Sell Palmer for Bowen. Yeah, just covered that. I'll try to skip the ones that I've already answered. It does get repetitive. Cylindra says, is it worth taking a -4 to sell Saka, Sarr, Canate to Mbumo, KDB, Mikalenko, and bench Martinez and Saliba to start Ryan Mikalenko? Yes. Juniper says, I have Murphy, Sarr, KDB, Salah, Saka. Would you sell Saka for Mbumo or leave? I've done it myself, and I'd recommend that transfer. Captain Bowen or Mbumo? Mbumo. Bench or start? I would bench Livramento from those defenders, and if I had to bench one more player, yeah, I'd bench Konsa as well. Yeah, Konsa and Livramento bench. Bonjour says start one of Nico, Kivior, or Konsa. Nico Williams. Very close one, though. Very, very close. Bench one, Canate, Livramento, Nico Williams, Kirkes. I would bench, I think, Canate here. Mateta to Vardy for a free transfer punt. I'm not a big fan of Vardy this week. I get it, it's Southampton, but I think the Saints could get a result. Thank you, Juniper, and good luck. Start Cliver or Diaz this week. Cliver. My mate told me one of the Arsenal centre-backs might get benched. Is Saliba a real risk? Worth benching him for Konsa, Sarr, or Livramento? Yeah, but I'm not sure what information he has. He could be right, but with Arsenal, what other options do they actually have? Because Timber will likely get a rest, so Ben White plays there. and not in the centre-half position. Zinchenko could play in the midfield to give the likes of Rice a rest, for example. So who actually comes in for Kivior or Saliba? I mean, he might be right, but it's not an absolute guarantee, I think. Tomiyasu's out. Calafiori is still out. If they were available, then it'd be a different story. Start Raya or Martinez? Raya. Planning on wildcard this week and bench boost next week. That's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. That's probably what I'd do as well. I would captain Mbeumo over Bowen, as mentioned before, Isaac. Largus says bench Milenkovic or Munoz. I would bench Milenkovic. All right, so what I'm going to do very quickly. So not the team selection graphics. I've shown that several times, and I think that's pretty much done and dusted. I've made a transfer already. Mbeumo in for Saka. He is currently my captain, but that could well change. I want to show you my predictions, the top 10 captaincy options, clean sheet odds, and all of that. So you have an insight into my answers and opinions on Gameweek 35. So the highlighted team weakness is Fulham, who do concede a lot of chances in the central areas and also on the right-hand side. And Watkins, if you can see the heat map there, that is his touch map this season. And the blue circles indicate the chances conceded by Fulham in the entire Premier League campaign. So moving on to the clean sheet odds, City, Everton, Villa, Arsenal, Brentford, and Crystal Palace are in the top 6. Wolves are bottom. And in terms of scoring over 2 goals, Man City, Everton, and Brentford complete the podium. Now, with the top 10 captaincy options, I know, it's definitely worth asking. It's one of the biggest kind of dilemmas and question marks this week. Who is the best? Yeah, I mean, how do we go different? How do we gain something over the others? It's a very open-ended game week for the captaincy. I've gone for Mbeumo top here, but it could easily be Marmoush or De Bruyne instead. I think Watkins deserves a very big mention, and he is 7th in this list. I've got Saka and Trossard there in the top 10, but if Saka doesn't start, I think he easily drops out of it. But yeah, that is what I've currently gone for. And Mbeumo, even Isak, Salah, they don't have great records against the upcoming opponents. Salah has done well against Chelsea in the past, but mainly at Anfield. At Stamford Bridge, it has been a different story. Maybe Salah is just a safe, secure option this week. But that's going to be my final poll. It will be in relation to the captaincy. No news on KDB as far as I'm aware. And thank you, Haribo, for another super chat. Last one, would you go Bruno to KDB for free or Evanilson and Palmer to Vis and KDB for a -4? That's a very interesting one. I take the plunge and take the hit. It's not necessary, but I do think Vissa is worth it for the next couple of weeks. And as good as Evanilson has been recently, yeah, I think I'd go for Vissa as well. Bench Trippier or Wan-Bissaka? Surprisingly, I'd bench Trippier here. I think West Ham have a better chance of a clean sheet. Thank you, bonjour. Yeah, Cunha's not a bad captaincy option, but no goals against Man City in his career. I was thinking about putting him in this top 10 list over Saka, and to be fair, that's probably a viable choice. And what else can we do? So injury updates, I'm going to let this play out, but I'm going to go to my team very soon and also set up a poll. But pretty much everything has been answered already. So thank you very much to those that have put in their questions and comments. It is appreciated. So let's end this one. So Saka to Mbeumo has narrowly won. And then the -4 hit to get Bowen for Sarr is second. Saka to De Bruyne is third with 11%. And buying Bowen alone is last with 5%. So we have reached 500 votes. Let's end that poll. And let's put a new one. So who will you captain in Game Week 35? And I did put out a similar poll on my channel. But let's see what the updated version is here. So let's put Marmoush, Mbeumo. I'm going to put Salah and Isak in this, just because they have high ownership. I've got them myself as well. So let's see what you lot are saying here. Okay, so Durgesh says Saka to Mbumo and Savio to KDB or Mateta to Watkins for a hit. I would do Savio to KDB for a hit. Yeah, Watkins captain, I literally just covered, mate. He's 7th in my list. He's a very good option this week. Dylan, I have Raya and goal. Which 3 defenders would you play? I would go for Gvardiol, Munoz, and possibly William Saliba. Rogers in for Sarr or Murphy for a hit? For Sarr. But you know what? I wouldn't take the hit. I'd keep what you have. Mr. Parkio 6 says, before last week, Alanga had 3 games, not many minutes. Why was this? Did he have a slight injury? Yes, he was subbed off at halftime against against Aston Villa. No, yeah, it was Aston Villa. And then from that point onwards, his form took a turn for the worse, and he also missed a lot of game time. Start Fleckin or Areola? Areola. Captain Visser. I think Visser will outscore Mbeumo this game week. That's what Easy says. Yeah, Bowen's a good option, Philippe. Start Saliba, Sarr, or Munoz. You could definitely say Sarr, to be fair. I think he's probably the one, ideally. I'm going to say Munoz here. Chavain says my mini-league rival is probably going to captain Mbeumo and has 21 points. He's 21 points ahead of me. Should I captain Mbeumo only or someone like Watkins? Well, in order to make up that deficit, I think captaining someone else can obviously be a big game changer. Of course, if it goes wrong, it does extend the lead, but I'd take the punt on Watkins in your case. Start Kanate or Munoz? Munoz. Bench Ruben Neves or Mateta? I'd bench Ruben Neves. Ruben Neves? But yeah, I'd start Mateta for sure. Philippe says start Cunha or Saka. Based on my prediction of Saka, I think he's going to come on as a sub. I would start... I think I'd still start Saka. I have Bowen and Mbeumo already. No news about Savio starting, unfortunately. Kalu says I'm captaining Bowen. And in this poll, it is very close between Mbeumo and Marmoush, which is very interesting to see. Let's see if we can get any information. I predict Raul to blank last game week. Yeah, well done. But we all get our predictions spot on at times, but yeah, you're going to get some things wrong as well, trust me. Would you play Saliba, Raya, or would you play Virgil or Burn? I'd probably play Raya and Saliba, I think, but I don't really blame you if you go for something a bit different. Yeah, fair enough, Adil, but I gave my answer. Does KDB start? I think he does, but we have no information, Oscar. Omar says, who to play? Yeah, Mateta and Murphy for me. Start Sarr or Murphy, says Quinn Anders. Murphy, you can see it on screen as well. Abhishek says start 2 of Milenkovic, Nico Williams, Mikalenko, O'Brien. I have Pickford in goal. I would go for O'Brien and Milenkovic. Is Isak captain bad? No. It's a good option. I think KDB starts. Would you sell Diaz for De Bruyne? Yes. If Savio starts, would you start him ahead of Mateta or Sarr? Over Sarr. Bowen is a good differential captain. I just don't think his ceiling is that high. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but his record isn't great against Tottenham. Yeah, fair enough. Ruben Diaz or Mateta? Mateta. Eze or Mateta to start? Mateta. David Spade says Salah and Isak in for Saka and Watkins -4, or Salah and Mbeumo in for Saka and Marino -4. Keep Watkins. Yeah, I'd keep Watkins for sure. I think he's a good option this week. But I don't like... yeah, I'd go for the last option. Salah and Mbeumo in for Saka and Marino, and keep Watkins. Eze or Mateta to start? Mateta for me. And I'd also say the same here, Anav. Mateta over Murphy. Charles John says start which 3? O'Brien. I'd go for Wan-Bissaka this week and Nico Williams. KDB starts, Savio benched apparently, says Chase. Let me know where you got that from. Yeah, that makes sense. Kandokar. I mean, it's not a bad set of choices. I would personally start Munoz and Milenkovic over Livramento, but we all have our different opinions, and there's not much separating all of them this week. Would you play Saliba, Raya, or would you play Virgil or Burn? Yeah, I'd go for Saliba and Raya. Honestly, though, I think all of them could blank. That's my personal opinion. Sell Mateta then Evanescence to buy Vissa, since Mateta more expensive to sell. I'd rather sell Evanescence personally. Yeah, so Savio benched according to FPL Main Road. So thank you, Chase and Miro, for letting me know. Milenkovic, Wan-Bissaka, or Kirkes? My favourite overall is Milenkovic, but I think Wan-Bissaka could be an underrated pick for Gameweek 35. I'm not a big fan of West Ham, though. Saliba, Konsa, Livramento, bench 2, Raya and goal. I would bench Konsa, and I'd probably bench Livramento as well. Went for Wan-Bissaka, says Mick. Fair enough, and we are locked in. So standard stuff. I made one transfer. I bought in Mbumo and I captained him. So everything is basically the same as my team selection video yesterday. Raya in goal facing Bournemouth at home. Milenkovic and Munoz facing each other. Gvardiol and Marmoush facing Wolves at home. I've also got Mateta to double up on Palace. Ismail Sarr's on the bench, and hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me. I've got a solid midfield of Murphy, Mbumo, Salah and Rodgers. And I've also got Isak up front. The captain is on, or the captaincy is on Mbumo. Marmoush is my vice. Verbruggen, Sarr, Saliba and Livramento is a decent bench, and we'll see how that pans out. No one playing until Sunday on my team. Love that. Yeah, normally I've got this thing where things go tits up on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday, you know, people bail me out, basically. It was different on the free hit, where I had a lot of Saturday players, but the Sunday was good for me with the Liverpool triple up. So in my case, I've got Mbumo captain on the Sunday. I've got Isak and Murphy. And I've got Salah. So yeah, I can see a similar pattern where I'm on a red arrow after tomorrow's matches, but maybe things take a turn for the better after Sunday. But we'll see how that pans out. I've also got 2 players on the Monday as well. Drop a like if you haven't already. I've answered hundreds of questions and gone through the graphics multiple times. Hopefully that has helped you. But yeah, we are locked in. We are locked in. I haven't made any changes to what I said before. Saka to Mbumo was made like 20-30 minutes ago, and that is it. So I'm going to show you my FPL Challenge squad very quickly. So I've got Pickford, Trippier, Mitoma, Murphy and Isak captain currently, because all Newcastle and Brighton players will have their points doubled. And in terms of predictions, I'll show you that in a little bit, one more time. Omar says, I have to play either Munoz or Livramento. Yeah, well, the answer stays the same. I'd go for Munoz and Mateta. So yeah, KDB starts, says Juniper. Sarr or Rodgers bench? Yeah, I'd start Rodgers. Rodgers or Murphy. Rodgers, we are locked indeed. I captain Marmoush as Twisted Parky. That could be not a differential play, but it could be a nice one. Nice captaincy. Chelsea Blues 99 says, I went for Vardy in for Mateta, Mbumo in for Saka, and Bowen for Savio, and AM with Pep. That's a little bit different, with the exception of Mbumo in for Saka, but the other moves are very unorthodox, you could say. And I do like all of them, except Vardy for Mateta. I think that's the only one I'm a bit unsure about, but hopefully Vardy can do well for you. Good luck as well, Sudindra. I chose Viss as my captain. I like that. He could actually outperform Mbumo quite easily. Mateta, Livramento, Milenkovic on my bench. Better than my bench boost week. Hopefully doesn't come back to bite me. Yeah, I can see my bench outscoring my Gameweek 32 bench boost. Cheers and good luck as well, Leonardo. Played the wildcard, says Abhishek, and still have 1.1 million in the bank. Resisted the temptation to splurge for the sake of it. Well, yeah, we always have that temptation to spend every single penny, but sometimes you don't need it. This is 6.6 million with limited money of 0.4 in the bank, so I have sold Mateta. Fair enough. I mean, we'll have our different opinions. Good luck, Chase, and everyone else. Chelsea Blue says, win against Rodgers and Watkins. I like both of them a lot this week, I have to say. I wish I could have Watkins for Gameweek 35. Welcome, Ansari. How you doing? Went KDB captain. He's in my top 3 for the captaincy list, and I think that's a very good choice. If we actually go through it one more time, I have gone for Man City 2, Wolves 1, Aston Villa 3, Fulham 1, Everton 2, Ipswich Town 0, Leicester 2, Southampton 2, Arsenal 1, Bournemouth 1, Brentford 3, Man United 1, Brighton 2, Newcastle 2, West Ham 1, Tottenham 0, Chelsea 2, Liverpool 2, and then Crystal Palace 1, Nottingham Forest 1. You're not going, oh, Danny Welbeck, how did you score that goal, says Twisted Parky? No, not for me. Was close between Vissa and Cunha, but hope Vardy will score against Southampton. Well, if it does turn out to be a 2-2, I think Vardy has a great chance of scoring. Thank you very much, Mick. Informative stream as always. Good luck. Jesus, bloody gases. Thank you very much as well. I do appreciate it. Sagar says, missed the deadline. Marmoush is my captain. Could be a blessing in disguise for you. Moses says, hey Dylan, I took a -4 to do Saliba to Mikalenko to afford Sarr and Bumo. Yeah, good transfers overall. I don't know who's on your bench. So in my case, selling Sarr for a hit wasn't really that tempting for me personally, but I think in your case it might be very solid. Yeah, Mikalenko, one of the better defenders this week. If I was free hitting, I'd have Everton defenders in there. Of course, selling Saliba or any Arsenal. Ansari says, Dylan, if Spurs win the Europa League and we don't win the Champions League, that fan base will be unbearable. We need to win somehow. Look, obviously I'd rather they don't win it, but yeah, it's kind of like the worst case final, United and Spurs, and it looks very likely it will happen. But look, I have to say, for me, the Europa League is very poor this year, and that change by UEFA of not having any Champions League squads dropping down, yeah, I think it does lead to a very big drop-off in quality. I mean, Spurs and United are basically struggling in the bottom 5 of the Prem, and they're in a Europa League final, basically. But yeah, out of those two, I would rather United win it, and all I care about is Arsenal winning their own thing, but it is very difficult. I mean, the Champions League, it's possible. I think it's an open Champions League this season, but it just makes me frustrated with the recent transfer windows. I keep going back to them because I think this is a massive case of missed opportunities from Arsenal in all competitions. The Carabao's winnable, every competition was winnable, and whilst you can't win every game or every competition, if Arsenal did what they had to, they easily could have had 1 or 2 trophies in the bag very easily. Let's see the other questions and comments. Mick says, opposite for me, I missed the deadline but wanted to switch captaincy from Isak to Marmoush. Looks like loads of YouTubers went Marmoush. I wasn't actually aware of that. Told us for days in Boomer. Yeah, I mean, who knows at this point. Maybe, you know what, I'm actually quite happy about that. Obviously, a lot of people would have copied those people as well. But I do like if Mbeumo has lower effective ownership than expected, actually. Easy says, Vissa to score 2 goals and 1 assist this game week. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's all to Mbeumo. John Walker says, Isak to Watkins, Marmoush captain, no Mbeumo or Vissa. Wish me luck. It looks solid. Maybe Marmoush is the template captain this week, and I'm actually hoping he blanks. That's the way things can turn out in FPL. Native Faith says, have I messed up doing Barnes to KDB captain for a -4 last minute? I don't think so. And Sari says, did Mateta to Vissa and Saka to Mbeumo for a -4? Thoughts? Yeah, good moves, and my only concern is Mateta. I think selling him for a hit could be a mistake, but as a duo, you should get more points from the Brentford partners in crime, you could say. And Sari says, we have the ability to come back. Now that we have come this far, we better make the final. Well, make the final and win it. I don't want to make the final and come second. Losing finals is painful, and it has been a while since any of my teams have lost the final, so hopefully that doesn't happen for many years to come. But yeah, Arsenal can come back, but it, like I said, it doesn't really change how poor the transfer windows have been. Winning the Champions League masks over it, and no one will care, but it's something Arsenal need to rectify this summer and also going into future windows to build a very competitive squad that has the squad depth necessary to compete on all fronts. Cancelled the AM in the last minute, got a feeling Brighton would beat Newcastle and Bournemouth beat Arsenal. Yeah, I think both of them are likely this week, or possible. Brighton have a good record against Newcastle as well. Well, maybe, John. If that is the case, that's probably because of... I think, well, is it the internet? Maybe it's my laptop overheating. Well, it's not even a laptop, it's a desktop. But yeah, it's possible. Chelsea says, also Chelsea playing in Conference League and losing it will be embarrassing. Yeah, I've said from the beginning, Chelsea should win that competition, but I guess Betis or Fiorentina isn't a terrible opponent for a final, but yeah, I mean, I think Chelsea and one of United or Spurs are going to win their respective competitions, which is not ideal, even though those competitions aren't great. I like that no dropout to Europa League like before, so basically either play good in Champions League or go home. Yeah, I don't really mind that easy, but my point is the quality of that competition is much worse than it was when Atletico won it a few years ago, for example. So, I don't know. It's still a competition, it's still a trophy, but it just... United Spurs final is very poor. Like, it's big on paper because of the names involved, especially United, who are actually a big club. But, yeah, it's really poor. Alan Zared says, I've captained my emotion, hope he doesn't give me a bad start to the weekend. Yeah, we're all hoping for something different, it seems. And Sari says, got to take it step by step. For now, just get that Champions League final secured. Yeah, I get it, but I don't know. It's just being realistic about it. Arsenal have a chance, but it's very unlikely. In terms of favourites, PSG should go for it. Bada says, bench Cunha for Gibbs White. Hope the Brazilian won't perform as last week. Same here. Richard Millichip says, sold Raya to Pickford this week, which lets me up for a bench boost in phase 6, where I have 0 conflicts between any of my 15 players. Potential for 15 returns right there. Yeah, it probably won't happen, but all the best with that. The board was a massive letdown when we needed them. Most extremely disappointing. Yeah, January definitely exposed them. I'm not going to lie. Because in the last couple of years, I think Arsenal fans like myself have kind of built up trust in the board. Yeah, they lost all of it in January. Yeah, well, your manager's very keen on giving the guard of honor. I guess it's tradition, We'll see a lot talked about next week. I'm sure people in the live streams and stuff will be asking me about it and Arsenal. I think the sound has fixed itself now. Yeah, it's probably just overheating. I also had that in the video yesterday. Chelsea Blue says, good for the Premier League. UEL is a good way to reach UCL, though for 14 and 15 in the Premier League. Yeah, that's obviously the main appeal about the Europa League. It's a backdoor into the Champions League, and I think both United and Spurs would do horribly in the Champions League next season unless they had a great window and made progress all of a sudden. Well, I think Arsenal will give Liverpool a guard of honour. I think it will happen. Europa League is a spot for the Champions League, like teams, Spurs, United. Yeah, I guess. I'm just saying, I think the quality in general of the Europa League has been very poor from the beginning. Bodo's a good team. They have a chance, yeah, but I don't think they're a good team personally. It might sound harsh, but I don't think they are. What do you think of Saka's minutes versus Bournemouth? 20, 30 minutes off the bench. Got Palmer. Is it time to give Liverpool another loss? I mean, it's inconsequential for Liverpool. For Chelsea, it would be significant for the top 5 spots, but yeah, I think Palmer can do well in the last few game weeks. It wouldn't be surprising when most people sell him or start benching him. Do you think Saka gets any starts before game week 38? Yes. I think he should start one game at least, but I'm very happy to just sell him. And I think Liverpool away will be a blank regardless. I sold Saka before Foden, mistake. I was asked this earlier, and my advice was to sell Saka first. If Foden is benched, that would obviously be a massive kick in the teeth, but I think it does make sense overall. So thank you to everyone for tuning in. It has been a blast for the last couple of hours. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and also, all that good stuff. Like the video, share it, all that yada, yada, yada. And you can also find me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Discord server, FPL League, Spotify, FPL Challenge. All of that can be found in the description. And Sari says, if we lose that second leg and then give a guard of honor to Liverpool, my heart will shatter, man. All the bad things altogether. Well, that would be directly the consequence and fault of the Arsenal board and also those in charge of the decision-making. I think Arsenal had a great platform from last season to go on to win the Premier League this year, and they've already done so well in the Champions League with such poor windows. Imagine what they could have done by getting an elite striker and all of that. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't actually that mad or disappointed. Well, disappointed, yes, but I wasn't that mad or upset about the PSG loss in the first leg because I think Arsenal can still turn it around, but also because it's not that surprising to me. I think getting to this stage and beating Madrid in the way that Arsenal did was the biggest shock. It does place expectation now on the Gunners, but I'll be honest, I'm not really having that expectation of them because I know what the squad is. Yeah, Lautaro's out for the second leg and Koundé too. Yeah, that'll be covered in my team selection and best team videos, as well as the deadline stream on Tuesday. So a lot of videos and content is headed your way. The same goes for FPL for Gameweek 36, 37, and 38. Could we still get a double Gameweek in Phase 6? That is still a distinct possibility for Aston Villa and Tottenham Hotspur. If any announcements happen, they will also be covered on this channel. Mohamed GA says, I still have my triple captain. Who would you use it on? Well, you could use it on Marmoush or De Bruyne in 36 against Southampton away. That would stand out immediately, but I'll be honest, I think it could be used in any single game week, like Salah in 38 against Crystal Palace. It can be used on Saka facing Southampton away there. But yeah, definitely ask this question in the next deadline stream and I'll give you a concrete answer. But right now, I do like Marmoush and De Bruyne against Southampton away. I'm just slightly concerned about their minutes. So when I do look at it, I think if you have no other chips left, triple captain in 38, which tends to be very high scoring, is what I'd probably recommend. Thank you, Beardy. Chelsea Blue says Postecoglou should have been sacked long time. I mean, they sacked Mourinho before the final. I don't think they will this time round, and a lot of that was down to the finances because Mourinho would have been paid off massively if he won a trophy. Thank you, Bader, and all the best. Lineups are out. Yeah, should we cover it? Well, might as well. It's just two teams, so I'm going to get these lineups out very quickly and then wrap up since we have been streaming for a while now. So with Man City, oh dear, those with Foden, cover your ears, cover your eyes. It's not looking good. So I'm going to get that up on screen. And I'm also going to get Wolves' team as well. So we'll start off with the home team, Manchester City. So Ederson is in goal. I was asked about Ortega versus Ederson, and yeah, towards the end I did rectify myself and said, yeah, Ederson is available, and some predicted lineups had him in there, but it was 50-50. Nunes, Diaz, Gvardio, and O'Reilly is the back four. You've got Kovacic, Gundogan, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Doku, and Marmoush, so nothing too surprising there. For Wolves, we've got Jose Sarr, Semedo, Doughty, Agbadou, Totti Gomez, Aït-Nouri, Andre, Joao Gomez, Menetzi, Bellegarde, and Cunha. So Strand Larsen, where is he? So on the bench, Bentley, Bueno, Huang, Rodrigo Gomez, Doyle, Sarabia, Guedes, Lima, and Giga. So yeah, Strand Larsen isn't even in the squad. For Man City, their bench has Ortega Moreno, Haaland makes his return, Grealish, Nico Gonzalez, Akanji, Savio, Foden, Lewis, and McAtee. Yeah, so in a lot of cases, I did recommend selling Savio, and Marmoush, obviously, for future gimmicks in mind, is less appealing now with Haaland knocking on the door. So we could see the Egyptian rotated or having his minutes managed, whilst Haaland builds up that match sharpness and fitness. So that is obviously some big news there with Haaland already back in the mix. And there was a quote on Guardiola or by Guardiola earlier, which I covered in the press conference section, talking about the team news. But that is it. That is all you need to know for Gameweek 35. It's out of our hands now. Hopefully you get the green arrow and get to where you want to in the mini leagues and the rankings. I'll see you very soon for more FPL and Use Your Fantasy videos and live streams. That includes a deadline stream on Tuesday for match day 16, the second leg of the Champions League semi-finals, a best team, combining the wildcard and limitless into one, my own team selection with free transfers available, and a lot to discuss there with multiple injuries, especially for Inter Milan and Barcelona. Even Ousmane Dembele has reportedly sustained a hamstring injury, so that could be a massive blow there for PSG. Yeah, exactly that, John Walcott, no JSL, so we'll see the impact on Wolves and how long he's out for. That'll also be covered on this channel, but I'll see you very soon. Enjoy the football, get those green arrows, and let's end this season very strongly.